Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Gish Gallop Girl. Jesus, I almost said the old title just because I'm so like in that. Any rate, my name is ThomasAnderson, and I'm here with.
Matthew Anderson, and if it's any consolation, I was hearing you in my head say, "Please, only one lie at a time." So, yeah.
Yeah, I almost went there, y'all. That's how married to that old name I was. Any rate, I do like the name Gish Gallop Girl. It is better. And before we get into this, if you're not hearing this on Patreon, then you may have heard some ads playing at the front of this. But I didn't want to do ads for these shows ever, but times are tough, and I had to look at some very real things. One of them being that, Dan from Knowledge Fight, who I appreciate the hell out of for the inspiration to do programs like this, Dan from Knowledge Fight had a decent job, but he did have to sell his plasma, notably for a while that show was really picking up steam, just to like get by. And I have a family, so I had to look at some very real sobering statistics on everything, and I was like, I got to run ads, man. So if you want the ad-free version of the show, and I'll work on some more extras, we're never going to do exclusive episodes. I really don't want to ever do that. I don't see a market for it. I don't see a reason for it. So while we won't be doing exclusive episodes on Patreon, some of the patron benefits that I do want to work on will be like giving everybody the clips. Like I want to have a clips library for patrons, that kind of thing. Like there's ways I feel like we can do this better for people without compromising our core. So if you do want to support the show and get ad-free episodes, it will be as simple as paying $1 a month on Patreon, or if you feel so inclined, $5 or $10. And again, as I'm able to provide more value, we'll be able to scale that up. Like I said, with things like maybe I'll include the entire show script, which of course is just the things that I write up ahead of time. It's not the things that Matthew here comes up with, or our general discussion. We may eventually get into doing transcripts of the programs, but for right now, the biggest single benefit to patrons is not having to sit through fucking ads. That being said, I will try to manage the ads where I can. I don't want to have ads for a bunch of podcasts, and if I do any host-read ads, which I'm told pay more money, I'll try to stick to things that I would only actually use or want to push. So that's all I got for now. How have you been?
Well, yeah, we already discussed Disturbed a couple episodes ago, I think.
Yeah.
Well, all in all, nothing major really. Just got my first piece of mail for voting, so that's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm installing Helldivers 2, which for some reason I feel like is going to be a popular thing amongst people that listen to this kind of show.
I have not touched Helldivers, as it is not on a thing that I will game on. I do not own a Windows 11 gaming machine, and I will never own a Windows 11 gaming machine. I also do not own a PlayStation. I am a Xbox gamer. That is not anything to do with loyalty to Microsoft. In fact, it kills me that Microsoft made the Xbox, and we've discussed this before, but I have it. I like my Xbox Series X. I like being able to just press a button on the freaking controller and it turns on my TV and everything and all that good shit. Don't come at me about PlayStation. I really don't care. So let's get this started. So we're starting with this is episode 11. We're in Blackout Chapter 3 now. Now, before I start this, Chapter 3 of Blackout, I had thought was going to be like a little more oomph to it. I thought this would be like a part 1 and maybe necessitate a part 2 because there's more pages in this chapter. but there's really less context when you really whittle through it. I had to read through it a couple of times. When you really whittle through it, there's not a whole lot here, but I think there is some important things. So we're going to continue on with Blackout, Chapter 3, Part 1 on feminism. Okay. So this chapter starts with Candace saying that the thing she's been most outspoken about in her political career to this point, meaning the book, is feminism. Candace certainly is an anti-feminist, at least in how she chooses to see the movement. Candace, in her own words, quote, "What even is feminism? The first answer that seems true is that nobody knows anymore. A movement that was born out of noble and humble beginnings and a search for equality of opportunity between the sexes has now dissolved into something quite different and altogether unrecognizable from its initial nascent form. Modern feminism is now the plaything of the left. It is the harbinger term for a witch hunt against all men. This time, though, the witches are doing the hunting. In the last 3 years, since the Me Too movement has taken hold and caught fire, leftists have done everything in their power to divide the nation into two groups, feminists and anti-feminists. In the process, an effort that was launched to call attention to rampant sexual abuse and harassment in the entertainment industry has somehow devolved into a trend of denigrating any person, male or female, who does not blindly support the left's modern feminist agenda. I, of course, fall into this group because I am an avowed anti-feminist, but does that mean that I support the subjugation or harassment of women? Of course not. Nor do I support the subjugation and harassment of men, which is exactly what modern feminism does." Candace offers no evidence in the notes section to support her assertions. It's all just opinion, designed to make the audience nod and keep reading. She goes on to say, "Nothing about modern feminism, commonly termed intersectional feminism, has anything to do with its original search for equality. Indeed, the founders of the feminist movement, more commonly termed first-wave feminism, would see none of their original movement in what the word is used to encompass now. Voting rights for women, equal legal standing with men, a recognition of women as equally capable and competent in most workplaces, and the ending of gender-based discrimination, these goals have, for all intents and purposes, been achieved. This is not to say that the pockets of sexism do not still exist. Of course, prejudice in all its forms maintains its hideouts in modern society. But the modern feminist movement works only to exacerbate works to exacerbate these claims. I'm working with a different system here. To exacerbate these issues. The truth is that as a woman in America today, I am now not only on equal footing, but in fact positively discriminated in favor of by employers over men. As a woman in 2020, I have a greater life expectancy, a greater probability of receiving a college education, and in many professions, a greater array of benefits available to me than a man. This is why I so proudly declare that I am not a feminist, rather I feel positively affirmed in my femininity." Candace goes on to the next section titled, "Feminism is designed to protect privileged liberal women." And she says, okay, and we're back. I had Matthew here get my frickin' mouse. Okay, so feminism is designed to protect privileged liberal women. And she says, "It should be first made clear that the Democrats do not care if you believe women. They just want you to believe they're women." She then goes on to relay over the next several paragraphs the career of Justice Kavanaugh. She goes through the man's entire career and appointments. The fact is, anyone that is even considered for the position of a Supreme Court justice usually has a long career in law, with the exception having been Justice Clarence Thomas. Behind the Bastards did an excellent series on him, and that's all I want to say about that, because we're talking about a different asshole entirely now. Brett Kavanaugh was accused of an attempted rape on a woman back when they were both minors. Other accusers from his college and high school years came forward, but to the best of what I could find, which is now several years later, no one else really came forward. I think anyone with a credible story clammed up when they saw how these women were treated, but that's just supposition on my part. Anyway, using the Kavanaugh case as her lone evidence, Candace goes on to discuss the story of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a young black man that back in 1955 was wrongly accused of hitting on a young white married woman in Mississippi while visiting family. He was beaten to death and thrown into a river with a weight tied around his neck. He died, and unfortunately, and Candace uses this story to point to the fact that women can lie, which of course she demonstrates herself often.
I mean,
Yeah.
the title of the show was going to be only Please
One
Be
lie
One
at a
at a
time.
Time.
Yeah. Moving on, she uses another 2 stories of young black males that were much more recent, and white women that also falsified stories that nearly ruined their lives. Candace does all of this to try to throw modern feminism under the bus, because these women were believed before the truth could be proved on these men, and I can tell you that I've seen that happen as well, but this also points to how someone like Candace works. Cherry-picking data and stories isn't something she alone does, of course. It is a common tactic done by anyone trying to prove a point, and it really isn't a good way to do it because it invites obvious arguments. Anyway, Candace goes on to discuss the unique situation that black female suffragists found themselves in, which was honestly kind of fucked up. She credibly accuses several famous white suffragist women of having been racists, but then moves on to discussing the Me Too movement. Candace notes that a lot of the names of women in the movement were white women. She then asks what has changed since then for women, particularly black women, since the Me Too movement left the news cycle. She then shifts her focus to take on the concept of toxic masculinity. And before we get into that, I want to mention that, for what it's worth, the Me Too movement was very, very good, I think, for women across the entertainment spectrum because, even though she didn't see it in 2020, things that would come along like the Watchmen series, for instance, has a black female lead. There's another series that we had watched, Yellow Jackets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Yellow Jackets has a black female lead and a diverse cast. Because that is honestly reflective of a high school soccer team. Were they a soccer team?
Yeah. The Yellow Jackets were a soccer team.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There have been a lot of other examples since then. Because these things don't just happen like in a vacuum.
No.
But it usually takes Hollywood, or the film industry, period, a good year or so to catch up to where they should be at any given moment.
Yeah.
Because they have, and this is not to give them any kind of a pass, but, they have budgets and they have schedules and they have things that are worked out well in advance of shows filming or anyone getting a leg up.
Yeah.
Like one example I can think of is the Oscars. There was a trending hashtag a few years ago. I think it was something like hashtag Oscars Why So White.
Okay.
Because it was a year where no people of color or very few were nominated for anything.
Ah.
And the fact of that is that there were a lot of really good performances that particular year, and people were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And so the Academy, seeing that big pushback and the big drop in ratings on the Oscars, made an attempt to diversify their voting block. Because the way that the Oscars, the Academy Awards, works is people from within the industry. A lot of people from within the industry are voters. So they are voted, the awards are voted on and given to people that, won the contest, basically, among their own. Kevin Smith is on the voting. He's an Academy voter.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Mark Bernardin might be as well, but I know definitely Kevin Smith is. He's talked about it a bunch. In fact, that's how he wound up with a copy of Spider-Man. No Way Home, was that the last one?
Yeah, I think No Way Home was the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, he wound up with a copy of that, like what they call a screener copy. Mm-hmm. It's for people that they are voters on these award shows. They'll get a copy of the movie usually while it's running in theaters.
Yeah.
And he didn't have his theater set up at the time, so he gets this screener copy, and he's like, yeah, I've watched the hell out of this thing, The screener copies usually aren't as good, even as like a DVD. They, at best, I would call them like an advanced cam.
Okay.
Yeah, like they're not as bad as a cam, but they're not as cleaned up.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not as cleaned up as like a DVD. Some of them are very good otherwise, though. Like when we used to have to torrent movies, you knew you were getting a good copy if you saw like screener in the description. Yeah, I think there's a cat that wants in. If you want to let her in, it's probably my kitty.
Yeah. Sounds like.
Yeah, she's like, why is people not letting me in? Come on, Squish.
Come on. Squish. Come on.
Wait.
Come on.
We're recording, you silly cat. Come on.
Come on.
Get in here.
Get in here.
Hello, girl.
Ever since I changed out my bed sheets from the blue ones, she's been weird about getting up onto my bed.
Well, yeah, she can't, like, it's like, it's all white and she's all white and she's like, maybe she just respects the fresh sheets.
Maybe.
She's like, I don't want to floof that. Yeah. Well, anyway, the cat's going to find her own place, I guess.
Yep.
No, silly kitty. Okay. Any rate, we are still recording, by the way.
Oh.
I didn't pause it at all. Yeah. So anyway, Candace shifts her focus to take on the concept of toxic masculinity. Now, this might as well be a curse word in the alt-right. She says that the removal of masculinity was always the goal, because if men can't be men, then the concept of the family follows. Candace doesn't say much else on the topic, ending the chapter, if it can be called that, just a couple of paragraphs later. I don't think I have to say there are differences between masculinity and toxic masculinity. Candace could have laid out the differences, but chose not to do so, which is interesting because she certainly has opinions on the subject. But since she didn't offer any up and the chapter is over, I can't offer much else on it. I will say this chapter had more facts in it than I expected, since she drew on actual events that do in fact prove that racism towards the black community is still a huge issue, even in the book, which has a central focus, to say otherwise. To say that this chapter contradicts her own central theme is about all I can say.
Yeah.
And listeners, I'm now sitting here with my cat, holding her while I do this because I think she just wanted people attention like this. She's being held like a baby. And I'm scratching her head. Okay. Candace Show episodes 16 and 18.
Man,
I subtitled this, NASA/Science is bad, okay? Now, there's... yeah, go ahead.
If there's any mention of flat Earth or God fucking damn it, or a non-existent moon,
the moon is so far real.
not a CIA base or a mirror that they shot up into space that they keep moving around with thrusters,
I'm just gonna say this. I'm not gonna say yes or no on any of that. Although not in this episode.
Is there secretly a swastika on the other side of the moon? I mean,
like,
God.
In her perfect world, yeah, I think so.
Iron Sky.
Because yeah, well, this week Iron Sky is a brilliant film. Thank you, Finland. Thank you. Wait, was that Finland or Sweden?
The one that didn't put the weapons, or the one that...
No, Finland definitely didn't. Finland was the only country in that film that didn't have like a spaceship that could go to war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the movie was Swedish. I think that Sweden made it, but anyway, it was a brilliant film, and I loved it. It's stupid.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. That thing was a fucking achievement. They made a game out of it. Yeah. There's Aces of the Luftwaffe, which is similar. Okay. But the Iron Sky game is a shooter.
Okay. Like Wolfenstein style?
No.
Not old Wolfenstein?
No, it's a space shooter, like a space top-down like shooter, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think, yeah. I didn't spend much time with it, but yeah. So the kitty decided to go do her own thing. So we'll see what she does. At any rate, this week we're focusing on 2 Candace episodes about science. And I've subtitled this one, NASA/Science is Bad, and Kai. I'm tempted to do her other episode from the week. I'm holding that one until next week.
God damn
it. It was more Hitler-Nazi Candace washing, and we'll probably have another episode to go with it next week. Candace gets hits not only on her videos, but I suspect she also gets dopamine from doing Nazi-friendly videos, so I'm sure there will be more to fill out our time. But for now, we're working on her views on NASA, science, vaccines, and so on. Candace starts the week with...
Kitay, lay down.
All right, guys, June is over. It's July 1st. That means step aside, homos. The heteros are back. By the way, did anybody else notice that Pride Month seemed a little bit dialed down this year? Like maybe they weren't feeling as proud? Let's talk about that. And speaking of Pride Month no more, let's get the sad news out of the way. Brigitte Macron may lose her coveted status as the first man of France because elections are underway and Macron has been defeated by Le Pen's party in the first round. And as to be expected, Paris is on fire. But first, I learned something from a flat earther over the weekend who messaged me on Minect, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. All that and more coming up on Candace.
Yep. So let's just discuss the French elections for a moment. The French elections are done in 2 phases. The current fascist candidate, Marine Le Pen, she was, at the time that I started writing this, leading the elections. Anyway, it's pretty clear which side Candace was on. So for now, we're moving on. Candace starts the show with...
Can you guys imagine being married to me? I mean, my poor husband, he rolls over, he's like, what are you reading? And I feel like a regular wife says something, I don't know, maybe a love series, Nora Roberts, sweeping her away. Me, on the other hand, he rolled over, he asked me, and I said, oh, I'm reading a flat earth theory. And it dawned into an entire conversation. He's like, why are you reading a flat earth theory? And I'm like, because somebody messaged me on Minect about it, and they included some links, and I'm just reading them. I don't know, I'm just an interested person. No matter what, if there's a bunch of people that believe something, I now want to know what it is that they believe. And of course, he pushed me on this, and he was talking about the earth curvature and science. And I said to him, listen, I'm not a flat earther. I'm not a round earther. Actually, what I am is I am somebody who has left the cult of science. I have left the mega church of science, because what I have now realized is that science, what it is actually, if you think about it, is a pagan faith. I'm going to give you an example.
Go ahead, you look like you have something you want to say before we move on. Or do you want me to just move on while you gather your thoughts?
Move on while I gather my thoughts. This couldn't possibly... It gets worse, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so much worse. But first,
Fuck.
Can you imagine what it would like to be married to someone like Candace? I can, because I knew women like her in the cult I grew up in. The kind of people that would believe whatever the cult leader said, which, to be fair to a terrible person, the cult leader was as consistent in their beliefs as Candace is, and they were skilled enough in crowd control that when something came up that they supported, that should have conflicted with their beliefs, they were able to explain it away. Such as, there was a man in the congregation that developed an aggressive cancer. He was going through chemo, and he was a deacon in the church and married to one of the leader's daughters. So he was very in the family. The church was one of those faith-healing churches where they would pray at people, yell at them in front of everyone in tongues, which is known as, quote, the language of heaven. And everyone in every church I was in that practiced it seemed to have their own flavor. Like it just comes out of their mouth. And it's not English. Anyway, there were a lot of services over several months devoted to making this man better and making it a real moment for God. I feel like at this point, though, too, I should somewhat explain the concept of tongues. Okay, I don't know. I've never looked into how this started within the Pentecostal like Christian churches because a lot of it is I don't really care. But what we were told was that there was a moment in the Bible. Don't come at me, Christians. There was a moment in the Bible where Paul, I think it was Paul or Peter, one of those guys. Again, don't come at me. I don't care. But one of them, while they were evangelizing, they started to pray, and when they prayed on people, there was a quote like this, probably a throwaway quote in the King James version of the Bible about how these people started speaking in different tongues. Somewhere at some point. In the Pentecostal churches, which were the only churches I ever saw this done in. That included ones that I went up to in South Carolina with family, and down here, well, not down here, thank God we're in Minnesota now, but down in Florida. I had been to several different Pentecostal churches across my young life, my young preteen life, and what I had usually seen was someone in the church, like someone in the church service, whether it was during the worship phase or the preaching phase of it, they would stand up and they would say a bunch of, like a string of nonsense, sometimes for several minutes. And we're not talking like English words strung together like a, like someone who's mentally disturbed would string together. We're talking like an entire cadence that sounded like an actual, like, language.
Like somebody speaking in Simlish?
Yeah, speaking in Simlish, but with a rhythm. And sometimes they would repeat the same phrase. Like, you'd sometimes hear the same phrase repeated for several minutes at a time.
Okay.
Well, eventually what would happen was when they would get to the end of their run, regardless, someone else, maybe it was the preacher, maybe it was someone else in the congregation, would stand up and start speaking English like a translator to whatever had been said.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. When you see this often enough in churches, you're like, all right, like in different churches too, that to my knowledge had no knowledge of each other. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they would go through all of this, and sometimes that would happen multiple times in a service. Sometimes it wouldn't happen even once. It was really random and erratic.
Yeah.
And the only one time there was one lady who would repeat the same phrase, and I'll never forget what happened. She wasn't in the cult church all that often. It's like maybe she was there once a month or something. Typically, this is how the services were organized. Sunday mornings, there was a Sunday school service, which would usually run between like 9 to 10:30 in the morning. The adults went to their own service in the main chapel.
Okay.
All of the kids were sequestered off into age groups. They'd do different things in the age groups, and then they'd pull everybody in together for the main service, unless they were, like, I think 10 and below.
Yeah.
Typically went to the kids' like Sunday school where they had like puppets, and they had this whole thing laid out for the kids. It was actually really fucking impressive.
See, if it was a Catholic school,
No.
I had a real bad Catholic joke coming to my head.
No, it's fine. Don't do that.
Yeah,
but,
no.
Yeah, but the adults would all go into like the main building, typically from like 10:45, sometimes 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. The preacher was smart enough that they never wanted to hold anybody past 1 o'clock, because usually Sunday football games start at 1.
Yeah.
And so everyone wanted to kind of like be out and either on the way home or at home.
Yeah.
By the time the game started. That included the preacher and their family. So anyway, sometimes they'd have like a tongues thing would happen in Sunday school with the adults. But anyway, when it happened in the main church services on Sunday mornings and on Sunday nights and on Wednesday nights, it was typically like one of a dozen people would stand up and just start going off. Well, there was this one lady that none of us really knew all that well.
Mm-hmm.
And she stood up to do her little go off tongues thing. And I'll never forget her phrase, because what happened really, I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Because by the time this happened, I'd kind of already written off the church itself. But her phrase was, "Ona ini." And she would just repeat this for minutes at a time. And then, like, wait for silence and sit back down. She did it one, and, typically someone would stand up and translate this.
Okay.
She does her thing one night, and she waits, and no translation occurs. And she sits back down. Me and my two friends, we were all like the nerds of the kids there, and we got to sit apart from our parents. We were well enough behaved that we got to sit apart from our parents, and we sat back by the sound booth. They had this wicked sound booth. We sat back by the sound booth guy.
Yeah.
And he looked over at us, and he's shocked because no one is translating this woman. And he looked down at us, and he's like, "She's not coming back. Like, she's never coming back." He's like, "I've been here long enough. She's never coming back." And we're like, okay. Sure enough, I was there for 3 more years. We never saw this lady again.
Fuck.
Not her, not her husband, who never talked to anybody. He's kind of a weird dick. But given the environment, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Never saw her, never saw him, never saw their special needs kid again. None of them. Like, the family just, after that night, they just vanished.
Okay.
Nobody spoke of them. I don't even know their names. I know they had to probably have had legal names, but I don't know them.
Jesus.
I just remembered her phrase that she would repeat constantly.
Could you run that one again? Just
What's that?
The phrase.
I think it was "Ona ini."
Funniest thing about that is, you remember Pitch Perfect, right?
Yeah.
They had an offshoot series with Flula and...
Yeah.
I
I didn't see that, but yeah.
Well, there's a scene that I've seen just pop up on, YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's where Flula and him are sitting in a dumpster. They're locked in a dumpster. And he's sitting there, and Flula goes, "I know exactly what you need to bring up your mood."
Yeah.
And he sits there, and he goes, "Una ini," and he repeats that phrase, pounding the side of the dumpster.
That's great.
Until he does that, and then he goes, "Ooh, ooh," at the end of it. And he keeps repeating that phrase and beat until the guy starts singing.
Bumper.
Yeah, until Bumper starts singing the lyrics to the song.
Oh, wow.
Which is fucking "Oh Child of Mine."
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So when you did that, the song started playing through my head, and I'm like, wait a minute.
That's funny.
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, well, this was like 1994 or 5, something like that. I think it was 90. Actually, maybe it might have been 96. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But like, that was typically what would happen, was someone would stand up, do that, and then someone else would translate. Well, at any rate, that was the kind of environment that it was.
Okay.
There was a lot of other shit that happened there. The only thing that they ever did not do there, they did not handle snakes. But anything else Pentecostals do was on the table. The preacher just did not care for the whole snake handling thing. They did not understand it. They're like, "I have seen this done.
Yeah.
I have seen people get bitten. I don't want to risk that. God is not leading me in that direction. And if God is not leading me in that direction, this church is not doing that." That said, there were a lot of fucked up rules there that were exclusive to that place. But anyway.
Yeah.
So we talked about the tongues. Anyway, there was a lot of services over a several month devoted to making this man better, making it a real moment for God. Remember, this is a man who had been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
Aggressive cancer. Eventually, he passed away.
Yeah.
Within a few months. The word spread quickly through the congregation, of course, and it happened on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I don't entirely recall. But I do remember that whereas the church youth group, which was a separate service for the teens, was usually held in a separate building, they called us into the main church for the obvious service that was going to happen, addressing how this man passed away even after months of directed prayer. Let me explain that a little bit. I explained that there were these hour-and-a-half long, 2-hour long sometimes sermons that would go on. The preacher sometimes devoted entire services to doing faith healing crap on this guy in front of everybody and running faith healing sessions with as many people as would come up during the service. We're talking screaming at his cancer.
Okay, when you say screaming at his cancer, okay, I know I'm thinking more what's the one with a P again? The
Pentecostal?
No, not Pentecostal.
Oh.
Sorry. Fuck. It's the Baptist. I'm thinking Baptist.
No,
that doesn't even have a P in it. But
Yeah.
I know I'm thinking Baptist here.
Yeah.
But like when you say yelling, do you mean like
The preacher was wearing a microphone, had speakers behind them, and would scream with the microphone clipped on at this man's cancer in his abdomen.
Okay, when you say screaming,
Yeah.
you mean just guttural screaming or like, Lord, kill this man?
Demons get out, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
thing. Because, see, I was thinking just straight up metal screaming at the dude's chest.
No, like, that would have been interesting at least. No, as it was, though, imagine, the preacher is screaming at the cancer. The sound is coming from the speakers behind them. There are deacons standing around this dude.
Oh, God.
Because he's going to fall over at some point.
Yeah.
There are deacons standing around this dude. The assistant preachers are laying hands on and screaming at whatever illnesses in other people while this is going on. It is just chaotic, planned pandemonium.
Yeah.
And me and my friends are standing in the back.
Mm-hmm.
While everyone in front of us, our parents, are screaming support at whatever the fuck they've chosen to watch going on in the front of the church. Okay? It was utterly batshit insane, and that was every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night of our lives for several months. Sometimes the guy wouldn't be able to, near the end of the term of his cancer, he would not be able to actually even get up out of bed. He would be at home and he would be on the phone, on a wall phone. And so the church had an extra long line installed from a phone near, the church was attached to the school that I went to.
Yeah.
And so we're talking attached by there was a doorway leading from the cathedral into the school.
Jesus.
And there was a phone just inside there because the kitchen for the school / fellowship hall that it was as well, we did have classrooms. We weren't entirely
not like the Catholic schools around here that are because the one down in St. Louis Park.
Yeah.
They have they have not a cathedral, but they have a church.
Yeah.
Directly attached to the building.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more of the Catholic private schools. That's where I'm going with this.
Okay, well, no. This place was it was like a big L.
Okay.
The front, or the back of the church, which is where the stage was attached to the school by way of one doorway.
Okay.
But, yeah, so anyway, they have this phone set up in there, and they had an extra long cord put on the phone. Mm-hmm. Didn't do cordless yet there. They were sticking with cords. Well, that corded phone could reach quite a distance.
Okay.
And so they would pull it into the cathedral. This dude would be on the phone, and they would be doing this entire crazy ass healing service directed at the phone microphone. This occurred several times. So, this man has been supported at this point for like 6 months by all of these healing services directed at him. And I was going to the school at the time.
Yeah.
I was there when they pulled his oldest daughter and youngest son out of class. I think I might have been getting water or something. I saw them get pulled out of class and taken into the cathedral. And I saw the immediate like faces of the teachers who hadn't said anything yet. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I knew it when I saw it on them, and I looked at them and I was like, like mouth open, and they looked at me and they put their fingers over their lips like, and so I didn't say anything. Because my first thought was, oh my God, these kids are getting told their dad just died.
Yeah.
And sure enough, so the man had passed, and that was a really big deal. Like I said, I think it did happen on a Tuesday because there was enough of like people murmuring in the church that none of it was worth anything.
Yeah.
That he had passed anyway. And hold on, I have to let this cat out of this room. Okay, so Kitty is out of the room. She was just walking around and being all like floofy, weird cat stuff. Anyway, so so I go on here with we all sat in our usual spots as if it was a normal service. Me and my friends sitting in the back of the cathedral. Anyway, the preacher strode in confident and went to the podium. What followed was an explanation that I was not prepared to hear. Now, keep in mind, I disliked the place from pretty much day one, but I was forced to go, so I tried to find joy where I could. I wasn't happy the guy had died. I was happy because I thought maybe a hole had appeared in the facade of the whole thing, and maybe my parents would wake the fuck up. Mm-hmm. The pastor said, and of course I'm paraphrasing, quote, "We all know what happened, and I'm sorry that he had to go, but I want all of you to know that he wasn't weak. His faith was strong, one of the strongest and most dedicated Christian men, the best father to his kids, and the best husband to his wife, my daughter. And God told me, the moment that wonderful man told me his diagnosis, God told me immediately, like a loud voice in my ears, as clear as I am to all of you right now, God told me that he would not make it, that the cancer would kill him, but he had to make his life here right first. And I would not be allowed to say that to anyone, not even my spouse. If I had told that wonderful man that he was going to die, he would have given up right away. That's how strong his faith in this ministry was. And that wasn't my mission. My mission given to me by the Most High was to keep him going long enough to make his life right, get his finances in order, and hope that maybe God would change his mind on taking him. But God almost never does that. His plan is his plan. And I understand if any of you feel that you were deceived or led on, but I assure you, my son-in-law was happy for your support, and it kept him going on the worst days. He loved all of you. And God saw your efforts too, and you will all be blessed as you helped him get to where he needed to be in this life. So I'm not sorry for doing the work of the Lord. That is my calling. The effort I put into keeping him alive until God himself told me to stop, I would and will put towards any of you as God directs me to do." The service then erupted into praise, tongues, and song. I know several people were pissed off that the man had died and had been turned with one simple statement. My parents were among them. I watched them cry and hug others and let out the grief, and I knew that part of the grief was the separation anxiety of thinking the pastor wasn't the person and the miracle worker they claimed to be. All of that was gone, as the pastor had explained in no uncertain words how God himself had instructed them to lie. At that point, I had my own turning away from religion like that, and I played the game of being involved until I was old enough to leave on my own terms. I realized that place was one of the ultimate worst places to experience religion, but it was my last membership in a religion of any kind. These days I am a Buddhist, but I don't ascribe any direct version of it, choosing instead to live by the simple principles of seeking the middle way and not being a dick. But leaving the cult behind initially was both a personally freeing thing and also scary, because even though I had been allowed to have friends outside of it as a kid, I still didn't personally know anyone else at the time that had left it. Everyone that had left it had cut all ties, which is what I also had to do. I wasn't in any direct danger, but I knew that I couldn't live in the nearest towns next to the cult, which were McClenny, Florida, and Stark/Lottie, Florida. Jacksonville was large enough to disappear into, so that's where I wound up. I was homeless for a time, lived in my car at the beach, but I was free. It was scary, and I saw how people could be sucked back into a church like that, but I maintained my freedom and my free mind. So, to hear someone like Candace call science a cult, and then push her religion and her gut feeling on things like vaccines being somehow evil, that shit angers me. Not in a way of throwing shit across the room, but as a slow burn kind of anger. Because the only way to combat that is to do a show like this where we can demonstrate not only that she is wrong, but how. Candace will mention her gut feeling later, and she mentions it often when she can't explain a thing. Alex Jones does this, and in my direct experience, the pastor at the cult did this a lot as well. But they disguised it as the Holy Spirit was talking to them, or God himself, as in the case of the cancer patient's son-in-law. Probably to no one's surprise, I was offered a place on the clergy of the cult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that one. Mm-hmm. Pastor figured out that his shit wasn't working.
Yeah, they had me pegged from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that might have been, my autism. Part of it might have also been that for whatever reason, when my mom got with my stepfather, I was like 8 or 9 years old. 8 years old, actually. They had my little brother, and then we moved from this trailer into a house on the west side of Jacksonville. We wound up at the cult church because we moved out to the country. We moved out to an area called Maxville to be closer to a church that my parents had initially started going to out there.
Yeah.
Well, a bunch of stupid, silly shit happened at that church, and my parents started church hopping and looking for other places to go, and they wound up at the cult church.
Ah.
Yeah. Which was close to where we were living.
Okay.
So, it wasn't like, it was about the same distance actually as the other place.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we had, we'd been out there, and, it was nuts. There's so many nutty fucking stories about that place, but, so I had, as a child, my stepfather, for whatever reason, he had a subscription to this Bible magazine, which may still be operating. I don't know. I haven't looked into it in years. It was called Moody. Okay. By Moody Press. It was a Christian-based magazine. A lot of fear-mongering shit in there. But they had a couple of issues, at least, where they talked about cults.
Yeah.
And that got me started on the line of looking up cults when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And figuring out how they form and stuff. So I remember being in the cult church on like day one, and I fucking knew we were in one.
Yeah.
And my parents had hit a couple of other churches before they finally decided to become members of this place. And, it was, they had gone to the cult first, and then they brought me along with a friend of mine. My friend stayed my friend throughout the rest of my childhood. He was a good guy. But, we're in this cult, and like I knew it was right away. And some other things happened that I'll talk about later in the future. But from the time I was like, 11 or 12 years old, I knew it was a cult.
Yeah.
So by the time this guy dies when I'm like 14, 15 years old, I had already like decided this place was not for me.
Yeah.
Well, that was around the same time that they had started working on me to try to get me to join them.
Yeah.
And I did not want that. I entertained the offer for a while because it was really good.
Yeah.
They were offering some really good material things, and eventually I didn't want any part of it. I just, seeing how they had done with the cancer guy and all of that, and other things that I knew about that ran behind the scenes that I'll talk about in the future more often. The place was just bad news.
Yeah.
It was bad fucking news, and I didn't want any part of it. So anyway, let's get on with this.
Mm-hmm.
They disguised it as the Holy Spirit was talking to them. Probably to no one's surprise, I was offered a place on the clergy of the cult. I was seen as malleable, with decent writing and public speaking skills that could be improved with time. I played the game as long as I had to, and I would like to think I left them in a lurch. But I really wouldn't know, as I cut all ties to the place when I left, as the others before me had done. It just irks me that Candace calls science a cult. It isn't. In fact, it's the opposite. But moving right along, Candace shares a story.
Exactly what it is I'm talking about, in case you think you disagree. A woman tweeted this. You may have seen me retweet this over the weekend. Her name is Beth. She wrote this. Years ago, I was assured that an IUD was safe, effective, and could be removed at any point if I decided on having more children. It was FDA approved, after all. Ovarian cysts, surgery, infections, a week in the hospital, and infertility. That was what they meant by safe and effective. And this really hit home for me, and I felt tremendously compassionate for her because I'm obviously of the baby-making age, and so many of my friends are similarly going through fertility issues and similarly realizing that the birth control that they have been given has contributed to that in some way. People that have pelvic inflammatory disease because of the IUD device being in them for decades. And for those of you that are not aware of what that is, it's literally a copper device that is inserted into a woman to make it so that she does not become pregnant. It's birth control, and yes, it is marketed as both safe and effective. All the best stuff, by the way, is marketed as safe and effective.
Okay, so first of all of those side effects are rare.
Yeah.
For one person to have obtained the entire run of those is unlikely.
Very.
Second, no IUD on the market is supposed to be in the body for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
They are to be removed and or replaced after a designated amount of time. No one is supposed to have one in for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Candace is 35 years old. Most of the conservative alt-right crowd would tell her that the baby-making age has passed her by, as most of them think any woman cranking out kids past age 25 is doing society a disservice. That's not my view. It's literally what people like Ben Shapiro, Stefan Molyneux, Alex Jones, Gad Saad, Lauren Southern, and many others have said in arguments or public statements. If Candace knows other women her age that are having trouble conceiving kids, it's something their side of the political aisle has been screaming about for a long time.
Yeah.
It's listed as one of the many reasons they don't want women to go to college or seek careers right after high school. They want them married off and producing kids. Naturally, women like Candace are used as mouthpieces to back up this conceit. Quote, "Don't be like me, be better," which has, of course, been a bit of Nazi phraseology since the start. Or, as others may see it, do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah.
So, Candace goes on.
And I was saying to my husband how it's become such a difficult topic to talk about because I am compassionate for my friends that are going through this. But then there's another side of me that is just amazed, confounded, and I genuinely ask this question. I say, how could any person get to a point where a doctor tells them that putting something that is copper inside of them for a long period of time is perfectly safe and effective and will have no long-term side effects, without that person being told the information, just having something that comes online inside, something spiritual, maybe as opposed to referring to it as your gut instinct, we should refer to it as the Holy Spirit.
I may have played clips before where she spoke about her gut feeling. She says it a lot on her show, and particularly when she is talking back to commenters at the end of her shows or discussing how she feels about celebrities or TikTok people. And then we get the return of Tate.
Or takes you and goes, yeah, no, that actually makes no sense. I have suffered from this condition of not trusting authorities when they say something to me that is so obviously stupid my entire life. And I contribute that maybe to coming from the school of hard knocks. Genuinely, I think that I'm grateful. I am grateful for having gone through the school of hard knocks because you are required to have an element of common sense in order to survive. And when I look at
You
people
grew up
and they
in Stanford.
hold on to, but the doctor said this, but the expert said this, and I see how extreme the things that they will do. They were masking 2-year-olds because doctors said, no, this person, if they breathe, it's going to be a bad thing. Well, I realized that that's a faith. That is a faith, and it is not a science. And regarding a common sense, to that exact same effect, my husband showed me a clip of Andrew Tate, and he was similarly discussing COVID. He was also one of the voices that was telling people, hey, maybe don't just trust the experts on this one before it was cool to say it.
You have thoughts, or do you want me to keep going?
Well, firstly, the Holy Spirit mention.
Yeah.
Just how about instead of calling it a gut feeling, we call it a Holy Spirit. Bitch, you going on about how science is a cult, and now you want to start calling your gut feeling a Holy Spirit feeling?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Let it out. Yeah.
yeah. And then, God, I've talked to a Catholic priest because of where I work. There's
Of course.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a Catholic school near. So, of course, I deal with some of the clergy from there.
Of course.
Well, I've talked to a Catholic priest who was with a friend that was buying scratch-offs.
Yeah.
And he was like, you really shouldn't gamble. And I was like, well, I mean, nothing's technically wrong with gambling. I mean, maybe not on a material level.
Yeah.
And he started spouting some shit off, and I was just like, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of a godless man myself. I don't really believe in all that Hunan stuff, and sitting there, and we were discussing for a moment, legitimately discussing back and forth, and he had brought up how being gay and shit is a sin.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and I just kind of sat there, and I was like, well, what tells you that being gay is wrong? Not that I am gay, I have some gay friends.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it says that a man shouldn't lay with another man, so lesbians are cool. And he's like, no, but you said a man shouldn't lay with another man, so I mean, look, preacher, I love me some lesbian porn too, it's okay. He's like, no, that's not what I'm... I was like, well, what tells you in there that lesbians aren't okay? And he goes, well, it's the Holy Spirit tells me. I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
We're done with this conversation.
It's once that's been evoked, it's like, all right.
Buddha's telling me not to punch you in the face now, so please go.
So, before we go further, I want to remind people that Blackout, the book we've been studying that started this whole thing, and Blexit, Candace's ongoing effort, was supposed to be a speaking tour for her back in 2020. Now, I estimated, based on Candace's speaking fees at the time, and how many tour dates got swept off the board that year because of COVID, that she lost out on about $31 million. Candace still has a hatred towards everything that happened that year due to COVID. And before anyone asks, she has said repeatedly that it was all no big deal, that COVID was no big deal. But let's continue.
I think it was maybe just me and the Tate brothers. He's the second most Googled man in the entire world.
Well, no.
I know a lot of people feel that they don't understand why he has the platform that he has, but I found this clip to be extremely interesting. Take a listen.
Now, for the record, this probably doesn't need to be said, but Tate is not the second most Googled man in the world. Not even close. A lot of other household names, however, have held that title briefly, such as Trump and even Hawkeye himself, Jeremy Renner.
Yeah.
As well as Will Smith and many others. Tate, however, isn't anywhere close to that level of fame. But we're about to hear Andrew Tate speak for about 2 minutes, and you've all been warned.
my habits now is ignoring all data. It's great. I love when people come to me and say, actually, we've got the data to prove. To prove what? You little. What are you going to prove to me? I can prove to you that the ice caps are melting. There's ice in my water right now. I'm going to leave the water unattended until the ice melts. Will the water overflow out of the cup? No. Why are all the richest, most important people in the world who are pushing this scam buying beachfront homes? Oh, but the data says. The data's from the Matrix, and you are the Matrix, and the Matrix is still alive. Anyone who actually analyzes data nowadays proves they're a dumbass. Have you seen that graph thing, that meme, where you have the most stupid people and the most intelligent people do the same thing? Then you have the midwit in the middle. Data is for midwits. You know? Well, the data says. Yeah, the data says. Well, actually, I guess statistically, the pharmaceutical company who sells the jab made the data. Why are you even reading it? Why are you reading it? There were stupid people who sat there and said, the jab's made of 5G cellular data. And then there was extremely intelligent people like me who said, I don't trust these motherfuckers. And we both didn't get the jab. All the people in the middle were like, well, the data says, and the news said. They wouldn't just make us all take a jab for no reason. Jabby jab, jabby jab. If you even look at data nowadays, you're a dumbass. You should just know. Street smart people don't need data. We've just been around. You know? I've just been around. I just know things because I've just been around.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Uh-huh.
When was this episode published that you did?
Oh, like about a week ago or so.
Okay, well, as of right now, the data for these lists are gathered from a variety of sources, but ultimately verified by SEMrush for monthly search volume.
Okay.
Right now, granted, I tried to get the most searched men.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that one. But what I did get was most searched people in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
And
keep in mind, Tate's not in the U.S.
Oh, true. But at least for the U.S., because I'm assuming Candace is speaking to a U.S. audience.
Right, okay.
Travis Cleese?
Kelsey,
yeah.
That's Taylor Swift's current dude.
Okay, so yeah, Travis Kelsey and Trump are tied for second place.
Yeah.
I don't see... Hell, Elon Musk is sitting in at 8. Doja Cat is sitting at 32. But I don't... I scrolled through the list.
Yeah.
And I didn't see Travis Scott anywhere in here.
You would be looking for Andrew Tate?
Sorry. Andrew Tate. Fuck. Yeah, still, no, Andrew Tate. Okay. I don't know why I said Travis Scott.
Because he's better?
Probably. I think I've listened to at least a couple songs he's collabed on.
Yeah. So, now, given how Candace falls for this alpha male bullshit, her siding with this idiot is not shocking, nor is her refusal to drop him like a rock due to his many valid convictions. I personally don't understand how he has a following, but whatever. And here we go.
Honestly, that is so relatable to me. I can't even explain it. I just know things because I've been around, because there are so many snares that I find myself in where I'm unable to articulate the point. I'm unable to articulate the natural reaction that I have when somebody tries to sell me garbage. I can't articulate it when somebody explains to me, well, the moon landings definitely happened because this, and the firmament, and they could get, and I'm just like, no, I don't know, instinctually, it just doesn't register to me. It just feels like that is a lie. And I've realized that I've been thinking deeply about this pagan cult that we exist in. It is backed by a false science deity.
Yep, I've been sitting on this one for a while. Mm-hmm. Candace has said several times in the past that she doesn't believe the 1969 moon landing happened. Nor any of the ones since.
Nor the most recent.
Most recent. Oh, what? When China dropped a drone there or something?
No,
We haven't been to the moon since like the 70s.
No, okay. I might be wrong.
They want to go back.
I have a bunch of science things.
Yeah, no, they want to go back.
But no, somebody. I'll look it up real quick. But I could have swore I saw an article pop up before that they have recently re-landed on the moon again.
Not with a human. No, not with a human. I can tell you that because I stay on top of that because I'm into that shit. So, yeah. That's all part of the cult of science, though.
That is what it is. It is the science. Oh, this is the new God, and it is incredible to see the ways in which people worship this deity, right? Climate change. Unbelievable. People skipping school, people crying, convinced these students that the world's going to be over in 10 years, despite all of the evidence that this lobby has lied to them repeatedly over decades. They still believe it because it's not a science, it's a faith. Vaccines. I was legitimately raised to believe that my children would die unless I offered to the God of science their bodies. So they could just get jabs on jabs. What is it, like 74 jabs now that children have to get from the time they're born until they graduate high school?
The actual number is closer to 50 max. But that also depends on the environment a minor is in and what local health authorities determine should be done. My research did not pull up 74. And also, I doubt anyone in Candace's orbit of whack jobs told her seriously to, quote, offer your children to the deity of science.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
And then I decided I wasn't going to do any of that. And I have the healthiest kids in the entire world, 3 of them. So yeah, I did not sacrifice my children to that deity. I still get called names for it, and I don't care. Abortion. Yep, I remember that one. I remember when the science god, the science deity, told me in school that it was a clump of cells. The science was in, it's a clump of cells. So for the first 12 weeks, it doesn't count. And by the way, you should sacrifice your offspring, just like the Aztecs did for rain. You should sacrifice your offspring so that it rains money in your life. Think about your future. Think about how much more money you will have if you don't have a child.
Yeah, go ahead.
What the fuck did the Aztecs do to her?
That's a really good question, right?
Also, they never okay.
Yeah.
I might not be avidly knowledgeable on Aztec rituals, but if memory serves, while yes, there were children that they would sacrifice, they were usually birthed already, so that way they would be easily. Now this is rather graphic. Hucked off a cliff, or whatever ritual it is they were doing. It was.
I prefer the yeet.
Yes, yeeted from the cliff. Yeet the fetus, as it be.
Yeetus.
Yeetus, yes. But
keep in mind, people, this is my son.
Now, they never perform. Again, as far as I know, in my bubble of knowledge of Aztecian history, which isn't that vast,
right?
They never thought, hey, how about we get the rains by instead of throwing people off a cliff, we just shove a coat hanger up Margaret. Call it a day. I don't think they ever considered abortion as a loop around to get rain. Also, they did it for more than just rain. But that following up, it costs a lot of money to get an abortion.
A fair amount. I mean, yeah. I mean, and there are funds set up for women that can't afford it.
Yeah.
That's always kind of been a thing since Roe v. Wade. But yeah, it should probably not have to be said, but I'll say it anyway. Sacrifice and abortion at the pre-12-week stage are not the same thing. Because sacrifice in any religion takes willingly giving something of value to a deity and letting it go to prove oneself humbled to the deity. Abortion takes place before a legally viable life has become a separate being. It isn't the same thing. And while I am sure that most abortion providers take their job seriously, I doubt that they are doing it in reverence to some pagan master. Nor likely are the people seeking the abortion. And of course, we have to take it on her word that her kids are healthy. Going on and back to Flat Earth.
And people do it for their careers. And then when my husband and I were in that conversation and he started speaking to me about, the Earth curvature and all of that stuff, what I offered back to him, not because I believe in flat Earth, but just because I disbelieve the notion that science is ever settled, I said to him, I can imagine 60 years from now where there will be a couple sitting in bed and there will be someone explaining to them how the science proves that transgenderism is real. Because it's happening right now. That is another pillar of the pagan faith that has been established. And now you have corporations requiring people to say Happy Pride on the way out in June because they understand that psychology is a part of the game, and they will make up the science. They will find the science so that you learn in school how educated you are when you hold these specific positions. And don't even get me started on history. Don't even get me started on history. Lie upon lie upon lie.
Yep, and that is where the buildup has been headed. Candace is a known anti-vaxxer and transphobe. When I first heard her get to that point, I screamed in my car, "Oh, fucking of course." And as for history in schools being filled with lies, that is something that people can agree with that study history seriously and without malice. But in the case of Candace, we of course know she doesn't see things that way.
I think the thing that broke me historically was learning about what they did, what we did, the Allies, to the Germans. Unimaginable. Unimaginable that all we're learning about is the Holocaust, and then we allowed what happened to 12 million Germans thereafter who were put into concentration camps, tortured, raped, had their children killed, and we believe that we are the good guys or something like that. And so now I ask this question.
And I'll say it as often as I need to, that's bullshit. We've covered it before, but 12 million Germans were not killed in post-World War II Europe, and America had fuck all to do with what went on in other countries that were under the Iron Curtain. If the government knew about it, there wasn't anything they could do, and the public didn't want another goddamn war. But Candace paints this as an Allies issue now, and again, it wasn't. Not a single Allied country was going to tell the Soviet bloc what it could or could not do with its prisoners. Most were in recovery and taking care of their own affairs. And since, as I pointed out previously, the people being tortured, used, killed had often been Nazis or Nazi simps, they were treated harshly and to the autonomous laws of the land where they were. Regardless of how we would see it, it wasn't our fucking fight. And also, while she is groaning about how Nazis were treated, she skips over how the Jews and other displaced persons were faring in Europe post-World War II. We've pointed out previously that Candace certainly seems anti-Jewish, but I am willing to take this further into saying that she is echoing more often hot Nazi takes on the subject of the Jewish question. In her own words, she has previously called herself a Christian nationalist. We'll be covering more of her Hitler stuff from last week, next week, probably, since she did a 40-plus minute episode on the subject. Jesus. And her read on a Minect question in particular is telling. But more to the point, Candace is anti-science and anti-humanity in a way that only Nazis tend to be. Going on.
To myself, literally, why was I put into public school? Why are we all put into public school? And the answer is obvious. To be programmed, to be indoctrinated, to be baptized into this pagan faith. This is why the longer people stay in school, it seems the dumber they become. And the more committed they also become to this church of humanism, because that's ultimately what it is. They place their faith in humans, while at the same time bizarrely mocking Christians. It just keeps turning out that if you follow the Bible, if you believe in biblical scripture, your life gets better and better and better. But no, they place their faith in something else that they can't quite explain, but they trust implicitly. Their faith is in the CDC, the FDA, the LGBTQIA, the IPCC, the CIA, the FBI, and even in the face of overwhelming evidence that they're being lied to, that their children and their families are becoming sicker both mentally and physically, the society around them is in full decline, they still keep the faith. They keep the faith. And they continue to mock the Christians because how backwards, how archaic is the Bible? The Bible is crazy. But check out my textbook on gender theory. I'm so smart. Just food for thought, people. Really think about that. Think about whether or not you were pledged into a faith unwittingly, because I think we all were, just a little bit.
So yeah, don't believe the experts in anything that have been in school and studied things their entire fucking lives. This pushback against science and school and the human effort to have a civil society that simply respects others is all Nazi shit. Candace is using the playbook on her audience. Don't trust the experts unless they play for our team. Candace rolls into a Hallow ad next, and since you've all gotten a taste of that before, we won't go through it again. That was the the Catholic pray with Jim Caviezel ad.
Yeah.
She also go ahead.
Okay, so I think she's completely forgotten about. Well, probably doesn't even know about the. Firstly, I'm the Bastards again.
Yeah, no,
great show. Didn't they do some bits on Nazi scientists that did some real fucked up experiments to just...
Yeah. No, that's like... It's like, oh God, that's got to be a massive double-digit percentage of their catalog, yeah.
Yeah, and then following that up, I, growing up in the mixture of redneck Florida to ghetto Florida, I don't think I ever once heard somebody successfully, like... when I worked for the fast food place.
Yeah.
The fryers were on the fritz, and one of our guys got real pissed off with it and brought in his own soldering kit and screwdriver and fixed the thing.
Yeah.
And it stopped going on the fritz. And he got up and he just went, fucking finally. And somebody went, Lord be praised. And he goes, I'm the Lord in this case. Praise me.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a fucking... it's not a pagan religion. It's chemistry, which is a part of science. If you put two fucking ingredients together that have a chemical reaction, they do the chemical reaction.
Well, see, this is where the whole...
The engine on a car.
Well, the Nazi line of thought, the dumb Nazi line of thought. Let's put it there. The religiously focused line of thought doesn't take science into account whatsoever in anything. Never mind that there were Nazi scientists.
A part of the Nazi, a good chunk of the Nazi war machine were scientists.
They kind of had to be. You have to have a lot of engineers in any military. Mm-hmm. Rome kind of set the pace on that. Yeah. And everybody else has been following it ever since because they had an effective military.
Yeah.
So good or ill, you have to have a lot of brains in the room when you're doing a war.
Yeah.
A lot of serious brains. And that goes for other aspects of society as well. All of the unsung heroes that work in civil government that, might just be a paper pusher. They're a paper pusher of very specific papers.
Yeah.
That if they don't do it, someone else is going to have to do that plus their own job.
Yeah.
And so, you need these people because it's not right to overload one person with someone else's work.
Yeah.
But people like Candace would go, oh, well, none of those people need to be there because we should have a limited government.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
No. And what they don't understand is that all that they do, like the Nazis found out the hard way that people would absolutely turn in each other for benefits like better food and stuff, but they would, they'd turn someone in for sedition.
Yeah.
And they'd pull them in, and while they're holding them, their neighbors are getting a benefit for turning them in. But then, the next week, not even in malice, they turn the neighbor in.
Yeah.
The neighbor goes off for questioning. Neither of them is bad. They've worked this out ahead of time. Like, hey, neither one of us is going to get hanged because there's really nothing to find in our houses.
Yeah.
Let's just work with each other. And I've heard about that kind of thing, read about it happening all over Germany where people were like, shit, we need more rations.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get more rations? Well, we'll work something out with Bob next door.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it wasn't unheard of. So, back into it. She also rolled into an ad for her YouTube channel and those stupid Stanley Cup knockoffs, all in the space of a couple of minutes of her airtime. Candace spends the next 2+ minutes talking about how Pride this year seems subdued. Now, I can tell you that I follow groups on Reddit and Mastodon that also noticed this year. Before we get into the next clip, I want to discuss the take I saw online about this, because it's different from Candace's take. For many people I know and follow online, they rightfully took issue with companies like Target toning down, or in some cases, not doing Pride displays this year. It's thought that because the alt-right screamed bloody murder last year over Pride stuff, that this year the companies pulled back regardless of the gay community having actually bought the merchandise to support it in years past. Because at least at Target, designers were featured that were part of the rainbow. It was companies listening to people that had sworn them off years ago. In the case of the average Candace viewer, she has personally said for many years running that Target is an evil company and no one should spend money there. Canceling or curtailing Pride shit is not going to change her mind overnight and make her just send people into Target. But because companies like Target are not run by normal people that can be easily reasoned with, they canceled Pride lines, or when the stores carried the stuff, it wasn't up front. I know this because I work for Shipt, which is owned by Target, and I am in a dozen Target stores any given day across my area. Some stores got no Pride shit, others got it but put it in a sidewall. As for Pride orders, I didn't buy a single thing for my customers this year, which means the website and apps were probably also lacking in the items being available, because alt-right persons were using the screenshots from the apps last year to bitch and moan, Candace being among them. I will agree with part of what she is about to say, only because I think large companies are not good, but I imagine it is for different reasons.
Like, you should never, ever, ever, whenever there's a person telling you to only see yourself within the confines of your identity, whether it's your race or sexuality, you should immediately become suspicious, especially if the corporations get involved, especially when the corporations back it up, when they're going BLM and they've got the fist bump in, or Pride and rainbows. You should recognize that there is something more sinister going on. And the thing that is sinister that's going on is whatever is antithetical to the Bible is being promoted. So I will say this over and over again. If you are a person, you view yourself to be a non-believer, you should realize that this entire Western perception, this new atheistic, the dawn of atheism that we are living within right now, it's very new to the world. As Tucker Carlson said, this is very new to the world. It's almost as if we are a unique experiment.
So she has the right idea, in a way, of not trusting large companies that jump into social issues. But then, of course, she loses the plot entirely by saying that atheism is new to the world. And yes, this is something that Tucker said on the Joe Rogan show recently. And here we are.
Something that's just not that big of a deal. I know that there's something the establishment wants to hide. It's called a media overreaction, and that always means that there's something that you've accidentally landed upon that they don't really want to be exposed. And this is sort of what happened when on Monday, I did this whole long episode about why I am now rejecting the cult of science. So many things that they've lied to us about. Vaccines, birth control, people that are being injured, and we just accept everything the experts say. And we're sacrificing our own bodies. It just feels strange. It feels wrong. When you look further in the history, they just keep lying and getting away with it. What I said was that science has become a pagan faith. Yes, that's what I actually believe. And I said if I don't get it from the Bible and I can't observe it with my own eyes, I don't stand it as the truth. Another example of a recent media overreaction, of course, was when Tucker sat down with Joe Rogan and he started talking about World War II and how we shouldn't have dropped nukes on, praying Christians. And they freaked out, like questioning the nuke thing is not allowed. And again, I thought, Tucker must be landing on some truth that they don't want exposed. And lately, we are learning that they've lied to us about virtually everything pertaining to World War II. But it is this piece of the Tucker conversation with Joe Rogan that I keep insisting that you guys commit to memory. So take a listen one more time.
So yeah, I've lost that clip somewhere, and I'm not going to go looking for it now. But Tucker says that atheism started in the world when the bombs dropped in 1945.
Okay, so then he thinks that nuclear fission was okay, and I guess it doesn't help that they named one of the nuclear cores that they were going to use in a bomb the Demon Core. Probably didn't help the case.
Probably not.
But
that doesn't come up.
Why the fuck not? It supports what they're trying to push.
They don't read.
That you don't even need to read. You just need to look into nuclear bombs.
No, that would involve reading.
Right. Have somebody on your research team do it. No research teams. Right. Fair enough. Have a research.
All that they have, I guarantee you, even though they have people that are supposed to be fact checkers or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
All those people actually do is play Candy Crush and go, yes, boss.
But this is what I'm saying though, is like one simple search might get them a bonus of going, hey, you might mention that that the interior of a nuclear bomb is called a Demon Core. But what he's saying here is that nuclear fusion is some sort of like contained hellfire.
No.
That when it is
no.
Why is that so much?
Basically.
Okay.
Basically, it's that when the bombs were dropped, people all of a sudden were like, oh, well, religion's not real. I swear to God.
Why is my version so much cooler? Why is my version of him, of what I kind of now wish he was trying to peddle, is that the nuclear fusion process is actually opening some sort of demon portal temporarily that just blows atheism into the world. That shock wave that you see before the destruction lands is the wave of atheism entering the world.
Yeah,
like
no.
Why does that sound so much fucking cooler than people just going, oh well, God can't exist because bombs exist?
Yeah, no. I wish it was that cool. I go on to say, Candace quoting Tucker on Joe Rogan is a trifecta of dumb. Because atheism isn't new. It just isn't. It was actually tolerated in a lot of cultures, even if it wasn't normal. And Candace, I'm sure, would be shocked to visit churches, even Catholic ones here, that fly pride flags year-round and welcome everyone on the queer spectrum into the services. But anyway, Candace goes on for another minute with...
And if you have a question, you go, well, how do I know God is real? Well, something that should maybe register you as common sense is that the people in charge are specifically doing everything in our society that is antithetical to the Bible. It's like they know God is real, and so the way that they are combating him is introducing the exact opposite of everything that we learn in the Bible, right? So the Bible says marriage is between a man and a woman. Well, what we know that these Satanists that are running our society are going, no, actually, it can be between everyone and anyone, and why not between a horse and a human? Because that seems to be where we are headed, specifically. Don't you think it's also interesting that for Pride, they chose the rainbow? Oh, okay, so something that we understand from the Bible to be a promise from God following a flood, they have decided to pervert that. If they weren't so intentional about trying to attack Christianity, you might be able to hold on to the belief that God isn't real. But once you start paying attention, you notice the Christian conspiracy, it never leaves you. So it seems that some people are definitely dwindling in their support for Pride. Maybe we can convert them into supporting things like family, like life, like birth, like supporting preborn.
Yep, preborn again. And of course, we're not going to play her ad for that.
Oh wait, I forgot that was one of her things. I honestly thought that was like somehow I felt like that was going to be a dumber thing.
It kind of was. She rolled into an ad for a fucking anti-abortion service.
Oh, well then it was what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Okay, right. See, I forgot about Preborn altogether. I forgot most of her ads.
No, it's fine. I wish I could. And then we get...
Oh no.
All right, moving on, you guys, because I don't know what's going on in France, but
I do. The good guys won.
Oh?
Yeah. And for the next minute and a half, we get to dance on Candace's mistakes. Keep in mind, everything went the opposite way. So just listen and enjoy her classic bad take.
I can tell you that Brigitte Macron, I don't know how long Brigitte Macron is going to be leading the country behind her husband, but they had elections last night, or they had the first round of elections, I should say. Their system runs a little bit differently than ours, and it turns out that Marine Le Pen's party looks like they are going to win. I mean, they issued a resounding defeat of Macron. So just a little bit of a backstory here. Macron called for a snap election after a poor showing in the EU polls, and the results have indicated that Macron is going to have to share governing responsibilities with Marine Le Pen's far-right group. That's what we're terming it, a far-right group. So what's really happened, obviously, recognizing that the country is taking a turn to the right, is people came out and decided to protest. And who these people are, nobody knows. I personally don't think these are French people, no more than I believe that Antifa burning down everything every time Trump did something was American people. I genuinely believe that when you're seeing these protests and things that are being burned to the ground, it should be obvious to you that it's being backed by the government, because these things just don't seem to happen when the people are upset. So it's amazing. The government will show up in force if you step out of line during COVID. Oh, you passed the COVID curfew? Yeah, the French police are going to be out there beating you into submission. But if Paris is burning down right now, suddenly they seem to take a back seat and allow it to happen. So let me show you some images coming out of Paris right now. Here's a video.
So Candace plays about 15 seconds of bullshit footage and then says the following, which is offensive and wrong on another level that I'll explain on the other side.
And of course, as always, these people are masked. I, again, will always believe that these people are feds, and when the government loses power, the deep state, so to speak, loses any power, it is a way of them sending out a force of people to make it seem as though it's the actual citizens that are upset about these things, when no, the citizens voted and this is what they want. They do not like Macron because he was an absolute psychopath during COVID. I actually believe he was raised up to be a psychopath. If you're following the Brigitte Macron story, it's a weird thing to marry the person who raped you statutorily. I believe Macron has no power. I think Brigitte has been running the show. And I also am a person who believes that Brigitte Macron is a man. I actually know Brigitte Macron's a man. Any rational person who reads the piece that was brought forth by Xavier Poussard comes to the exact same conclusion, which lets you know that there is something very sinister going on in France. And I find these results to be extremely promising. I think the French people have been oppressed for a very long time by their media and by the government, and the union between the two constantly lying about the French people. So hopefully, this is going to represent some sort of a turning point.
Yeah. Thoughts before I continue.
Okay.
And I found the Tucker clip.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
I named it Fucker Carlson.
Fucker Carlson. Okay, so firstly, what the fuck has France done? Like, why is she so worried about French politics? The only part about French politics that I care about is going, oh, hey, France is in another revolution. Radical. You know, like, looking at their news, I don't quite understand, but
I'm not entirely sure, but I think the secret of France and Candace is going to come out eventually.
It's got to, because this is fucking weird as shit that she's chosen to go after France for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
But okay, so
While you get your thoughts, do you want to hear the fucker Carlson clip?
Yeah.
Okay, because, this really should be heard.
Yeah.
It's worth hearing him say some of the dumbest shit.
There is a whole world that we can't see that acts on people, a supernatural world that's acting on us all the time for good and bad. Every society has thought this before ours. In fact, every society in all recorded history has thought that until, I'll be specific, August 1945, when we dropped the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and all of a sudden the West is just officially secular. We're God. There is no God but us. And that's the world that we have grown up in, but that's an anomaly. Like, no one else has ever thought that. There's never been a society that thought that. Every other society has assumed, and they've had all kinds of different explanations, and the details differ, but the core idea does not differ. It never has differed from caves until now, that we're being acted on by spiritual forces at all times.
To be clear, that...
Yeah, so that was the fucker Carlson clip that I wanted to play.
No, I think fucker Tarlson's correct.
Yeah.
But...
You have nothing. Okay.
Okay, Brigitte Macron. Okay, so I need something cleared up. Is Brigitte Macron the name of the president?
No.
Okay, that is his wife.
Brigitte Macron is the wife. Emmanuel Macron is the president.
Emmanuel Macron. Okay,
Yeah.
because she never says Emmanuel Macron. She only ever says Brigitte Macron, and so I needed that clarified. And the French are very strange with their naming sometimes, so could be.
Well, I mean, it's literally another language.
Yeah. I can't blame them for however they choose to do things, but also
everything sounds fancier even when it's not.
Yeah, which is why Brigitte is believable to be like. Okay,
well,
it's
funny because I've read her daughter is like 41 years. Her oldest daughter is like 41 years old, and I've heard her name said a couple different ways. Mm-hmm. Candace pronounces it to phone. And I'm like, all right, well, when I look at the name, my head translates it to Tiffany. And I'm just like, and it's not spelled like Tiffany.
Yeah.
It can be. Like, you could see it. Like, I think it's Tiphaine. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, Tiffany. Like, if you handed me that name on a card, I would be like, okay, so your name is Tiffany. Mm-hmm. At which point, being a proper French lady, she would probably say something like, actually is pronounced Tiffany.
Yeah.
And I would be like, right, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna roll my mouth into different things for these people. I do like French food. I appreciate French culture and cuisine, and the fact that when it came time for their revolution, they did not fuck around.
Yeah. But that back on the names portion.
Yeah.
The guy that she's claiming to have the article from,
Xavier Poussard.
Poussard.
That might actually be how that's pronounced.
Okay, the reason why I have a slight little thing about his first name is I know a guy that frequents my store that I work at now who has been asked before by various different people, because there's a lot of different ethnicities that shop at my store.
Right.
One of them is this real nice old French lady who thinks it's hilarious that Americans made canned wine. Uh-huh. And she's sitting there and she goes, so do you pronounce your name Javier like in Spanish? Or do you say it Xavier? And I looked at her and I was like, why would you think this man's name is Xavier? She's like, well, that's how the French say it. And I was like, okay.
It sounds fancy.
Yeah, it sounds fancy as shit. But that's why I was sitting here and I'm like, hang on, if he's actually French.
I think I would have spoken for him and been like, no, ma'am, look, we're all dirty English peasants here. It's Xavier.
Oh, no, I got it. God. But, no, see, for that, though, I feel like as much as I don't want to get this man's name right,
yeah,
I feel like the proper pronunciation, what's his last name again?
Poussard?
Should be Xavier Poussard.
Yeah.
Which sounds far more credible.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Especially because I thought she said puss-tard before.
Puss-tard.
Puss-tard.
I mean, honestly, there's a guy who she loves Elon Musk and she loves Twitter. There's a guy who goes on Twitter that has met Elon Musk now.
All right.
His Twitter name is CatTurd2. This is taken as a serious person on Twitter. CatTurd2. Not even good enough to be CatTurd1.
That invokes that there is a CatTurd1 out there.
And there may be a CatTurd3. Who knows? I know that I only go onto Twitter to follow Candace, and that's it. I'm not looking for cat turds. We have cats, and I don't look for their turds, so that's someone else's job. Now, we've already covered the bullshit tale of Mrs. Macron and how she is not a trans woman and how her brother runs the family chocolate factory, but she also did not perform statutory rape on Emmanuel Macron. They got involved physically when he was past the age of consent, which is 15 in France.
Okay.
Do they have a vast age difference? Yes. Does it matter by French law? No. Candace is applying American laws to France. Alt-right people do this a lot. Candace also mentions this almost every time that she brings up the Macron family, and it is always as wrong as every take she has about France. She then spends the next several minutes going through celebrity garbage and comments from the past videos, and then we get into this.
I'm not subscribing to the flat earth theory at all. I just decided to read an article on it because why not? When this person writes, "Hey Candace, I heard you mention flat earth on your live today and I had to reach out. Please, I'm imploring you to continue down the flat earth rabbit hole because it's true. NASA has lied to us about the shape of our world, plain and simple. I believe the main reason being to separate us from God because nobody would be able to deny him if people knew that we actually live in a place that necessitates the existence of a creator. Once you look, you will see that all of the evidence points to the earth being flat. The biggest indicators, in my mind, being the fact that we can see objects at a distance that should be hidden behind hundreds of feet by the curve of the earth. The fact that all modern technology assumes the earth is a flat topographical plane to function, airplanes, GPS, and the truly hilarious footage and abject lack of proof that we actually went to the moon. Reach out to YouTubers that have done the research for more information." And he offers some YouTubers. Thanks. Here's what I will say to you.
Yep, she's a moon denier. And Candace is wrong about one more thing. Reading Chaos is not required to know or learn that the CIA has done some fucked up stuff. I do think it's funny, the idea that she didn't know there was an LSD program, or MK Ultra, and everything else that she isn't bothering to learn more about, just taking it on the word of this one book. So whatever. That was episode 16. Episode 18 now gets its turn.
Oh, fuck.
First off, this episode is longer than most of hers have been. My guess, since I like to follow the money, is that because she didn't do an episode on July 4th, she had to make up the time for her ad reads because there are more ads on the show.
Oh, you're telling me that she actually took, like, a moment to celebrate an American holiday where we fire off scientifically calculated explosions to create pretty beautiful shimmers in the sky?
Yeah.
That should launch our quote-unquote flat earth downwards with the amount of force from everybody firing off fireworks on the 4th?
Well, see, if it's a flat earth in space, we'd never know. But if it's a flat earth on a plane, we'd still never know.
We would spin is my point here, because if the whole of North America, not including Canada, firing off fireworks on the 4th...
I don't want to get into flat earth shit.
I feel like that would be enough force to spin us like a fucking coin. Because the rest of the earth is not generating any force.
But it is.
No!
So...
God damn it.
I like to imagine some pissed business calling her office and screaming about not getting all the ad time they paid for. America be damned. It's just something I chuckled about when I heard an ad for her meat selling company 3 times in one day. Anyway, here's the cold open.
Uh-oh, ladies and gentlemen, I am in trouble again. Why am I always in trouble? I'm trending on Twitter for saying something unsayable. Look at this #1 trend. It reads, Candace Owens rejects Earth theories, faces backlash. How am I ever going to survive this? But also I have to admit that trend is kind of cool because I'm trending under science, and that is a first. It's got me feeling like CO the science gal.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I did not cut
Christ
this
is
in.
king.
This is her show.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I know I'm having way too much fun. I have to stop. Plus, later on, we have Joe Biden's team. They have rolled out a second excuse for his debate performance. It turns out that it wasn't a cold after all. It was jet lag. Let's talk about that. And Kamala Harris is definitely going to get the black vote because she made an appearance at the BET Awards and showed how undeniably black she now is. All that coming up on Candace.
Yeah.
Okay, the use of Bill Nye was did she keep it under 60? Correction, did she keep it under 40 seconds?
What?
The Bill
I
Nye
don't know.
use.
I didn't fuck with that.
Okay, see, because if she kept it within just underneath the terms of service, she'd have a certain amount of room in which she could be sued for. So I hope she did keep it underneath that.
Yeah.
If Bill Nye decides to ever sue her for some reason. Not likely, but still. Also, again, bold choice using that.
Yeah. Yeah. Comedy. So, yeah. So, talking back to Candace and Tucker, what I think eludes people like Tucker and Candace is that many people express religious belief outside of Christianity and they can't handle it. There are listener and viewer comments occasionally from people professing to be Muslims, and Candace acknowledges it and moves along quickly. But anyway...
That is what I believe made the media freak out. They dressed it up in, the morality of World War II and the bomb. But I think it was actually this. I'm starting to see a trend that every time you start talking about the Bible, you start talking about God, you start talking about spiritualism, and recognizing that America and the West is an anomaly, that there are spiritual forces that are working on people at all times, the media panics because the media, in my view, is a bit satanic. I genuinely believe this, and so did one of the people that was watching this trend. I had a random user reach out and say, the reason they're freaking out is because NASA is satanic. The origins of NASA are satanic. And I went, what? What are you talking about? And OMG, you guys, buckle up. What I'm about to tell you, you're not even going to believe me, but you can just research this. You don't even have to go down a dark hole on Reddit. You can just literally open Wikipedia. It is so in our faces, and yet we don't learn about this. And now I understand why they are very upset with me. So
Satanic NASA. Yep, that's where we're going with this one, and why I wrapped it with the other one.
God.
Candace is so anti-science and thusly anti-knowledge that I couldn't just make this one episode of her show. There's a lot more to get through. So Candace starts with this.
you may have heard of a man named Aleister Crowley. If you haven't, I'll provide you with some brief spark notes. Aleister Crowley was an Englishman. He was also a drug abuser. He was a bisexual who is credited with heavily influencing the eventual counterculture revolution of the 60s in America. Free love, free love. Yeah, that.
So I'm just going to pause this here. Candace does link to the Telegraph article. But after the first couple of paragraphs, it hits a paywall. So I popped the link into the Wayback Machine at Internet Archive, and I can tell you that this is the only source she uses. She basically reads the article entirely from source to support her arguments. even after she says she doesn't. The Telegraph, it should be noted before we go on, is of course a conservative newspaper, if it can be called that, from the UK. And this article is from 7 years ago, published in 2017. It was written in response to the movie release of Hidden Figures, a movie about how the history of NASA overlooked the contributions of at least 3 black female mathematicians. The movie happened to have done well, so naturally racist shit fuckbag articles like this about NASA popped up around that time. It'll become clear to people more over time, but I think Candace's use of this article fits in not only with her anti-science worldview, but also fits in with her overall disposition towards the black community. I don't want to put the label self-loathing on her, but there are times when it seems to fit. Anyway, let's continue.
Chaos. Things got weird and satanic in the 60s in America. And America is where this Englishman, Aleister Crowley, eventually moved. But what he is most famous for is black magic. He was an occultist who pledged his allegiance to demons. He believed that he could summon demons, okay? The story goes that when he was 13 years old, he read the book of Revelation in the Bible, and he became inspired, not by Jesus Christ, but by the 7-headed beast that is written by the whore of Babylon. So in case you are somebody that's not familiar with the Bible and Revelations, they talk about this 7-headed beast that rules over every tribe and people and tongue and nation, okay? So it's satanic. It's a satanic beast. When Aleister got older, he started a religious cult, a satanic cult known as the Lima. Crowley believed that the number of the beast, 666, was significant. He believed that humanity was entering in a new eon and that his religious motto, which was do what thou wilt, would rule it, right? He believed that actually he could create this beast and rule over nations by practicing rituals. He routinely practiced sex rituals. He believed in masochistic and sadistic sex, believed in free love, and he was very much connected to the elite in America. He was just openly publishing articles for Vanity Fair because he was best friends with their editor, and many of the elite in our society were his followers and believers. A Satanist. This is a fact. You can look this up.
So I did. I wouldn't call all of these people elites, but one of his friends was the publisher of Vanity Fair, and Crowley did write for them, but he toned down the occult stuff somewhat.
One such follower was a man named Jack Parsons, another wealthy young man. And here's what you should know about this time period. Before Jack Parsons enters the scene in America, the scientific consensus was that we would never enter space, that was an impossibility. But this rich kid, who also happens to be an occultist and who also would perform sex rituals and blood sacrifice to summon demons, well, no, he expressed the belief that they could fundamentally alter humanity, and he had a vision. He said, no, we can make this work. We can get to space. Check out this article. Again, this is published. You can look this up yourself. Here's the headline: Sex, Rocket Science, and Satanism. Meet NASA's real hidden figures. And I'm going to read you directly from this article because it's so unbelievable. My jaw was on the floor. I'm skimming through it because it's way too long. It would make this show forever, but we will link it, and you absolutely must read it.
Yeah, so as I said, she pretty much just reads verbatim from the article. Jack Parsons was indeed into weird shit. So fucking what? A lot of people are, and I don't particularly care for her singling him out. But I suspect she only has done so because the article does. I'm fairly certain that if the article hadn't mentioned Parsons, he would have never been on her radar.
It reads, quote, Jack Parsons is barely acknowledged on NASA's website, and he's the man who made rockets a reality and co-founded the agency's Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, home to missions which paved the way for the Apollo programs and continue to explore Mars and outer space today. If Parsons' life story was a film script, it would be dubbed preposterous. He invented jet propulsion technology in the face of industry-wide derision that rockets would never exist, but was also a senior figure in the occult and invited L. Ron Hubbard, yes, L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology, into his confidence and riotous sex parties. Parsons tried to sell his government-funded inventions to Israel before winding up dying at the age of 37 in a self-created explosion, leaving a mass of disturbing materials for his friends to discover. Here's the remarkably...
Yeah, so, okay, Parsons was trying to get employment with the newly formed State of Israel in the early 1950s. He had his secretary send them information based on work he was doing for Hughes Aircraft Company, while they were doing rocket shit for the U.S. Army. He was turned in by the same secretary to the FBI, and even though he was cleared of espionage charges, he lost his security clearances and his job at Hughes. Candace goes on to read through the article, so I guess she's slightly better than Alex Jones, who famously only reads fucking headlines. After about 10 minutes of Candace reading through the article, which has a combination of supposition and fact, she ends with...
and then came under the investigation of the FBI. They believe that he had been planning to give his rocket plans to the newly founded Israeli government in exchange for admission to the country and the chance of a new life abroad. Then he died rather mysteriously, Jack Parsons, in an explosion. Some claim he was suicided, some claim that it was an accident, some claim that he never died and actually he just disappeared. Honestly, we'll never know. We don't need to peddle in conspiracy theory because in this story, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, no need to peddle in conspiracy theories, Candace. Here are some details of his death. Jack Parsons died on June 17th, 1952, in an explosion at his home laboratory in Pasadena, California. However, the exact circumstances of his death remain somewhat mysterious and have been the subject of speculation. But here are the key points about Parsons' death. The official cause was ruled as an accident. Police claimed the explosion resulted from Parsons dropping a can of mercury fulminate, a highly sensitive explosive used as a detonator. The explosion caused severe injuries to Parsons. His right forearm was amputated, his legs and left arm were broken, and a hole was torn in the right side of his face. Despite his critical injuries, Parsons was found conscious by upstairs lodgers. His reported last words were, "I wasn't done," or "I'm not finished yet." Parsons died approximately 37 minutes after the explosion at Huntington Memorial Hospital. He did not carry his own fucking damaged corpse out of the hospital. Anyway, she follows with...
Have it, guys. That's the origins of NASA and the program, the Jet Propulsion Program, we're going to make it to space mission. But don't worry, it would be totally crazy for you guys to think that Satan worshippers are still involved in NASA. Obviously, after it got started, they went totally clean. Everything was been above board. Nobody believes in this stuff anymore. And everything's great and everything's normal. And now suddenly, I guess if the goals of Aleister Crowley was to create a society that would deceive the entire world, now suddenly in the West, we don't believe any of this stuff. We look back on that story of a man who dedicated his entire life and an entire religious cult to summoning demons, saying that they had summoned them successfully, that they had experiences with Satan, and they were just being imaginative. Yeah, no. Satan can't possibly be real, right? So yeah, think back to what Tucker is saying, that suddenly after this period, exactly when this was going on, when people were following this religion and believing in Satan, and then suddenly Americans just kind of got on board the atheist train. And we just said, yeah, no, we don't believe in any of that stuff in spiritualism anymore. Instead, what we believe in is science, rationality.
Yep, all of that. And then she ends with...
And God forbid someone like Candace start talking about the Bible. Oh my God, there she is. She's saying she doesn't just trust the science. Yeah, I'm saying actually a little bit more than that. I think science has become a bit satanic. They're telling you to do things that are utterly satanic, sacrificing your children in the name of science because it's just a clump of cells. It's getting weird out there, and I'm sorry that I notice. But that's all I'll say on that topic. We've been talking about a lot of bad. I think it's now time to talk about something good. You know what's good? The fact that the 4th of July is happening tomorrow. Well, it's not actually that good for me because my husband's English, so it's a very sensitive holiday in my household. But did you know, anyways, because he's not watching, that 250 years ago Americans revolted against imported goods at the Boston Tea Party? Unfortunately, over 85% of
Yep, it's an ad for Good Ranchers. The only sponsor of this episode, and one which we've already discussed before, so I won't play the ad read this time. Candace goes on in this episode to lie about things Biden said at a fundraiser in McLean, Virginia, and I'm not going to play that clip because she dances around what Biden actually said and misquotes him quite a bit, and it's not in the theme of this show tonight. Your thoughts?
Firstly,
Uh-huh.
the husband bit,
Yeah.
you know, that... Okay. And then the... sorry, I got so used to your phone being the microphone that, like, it keeps messing with me with the fact that the microphone is actually now sitting right in front of me and it's not
Yeah.
your phone.
It's fine.
So, like, you move it that way and I think, I need to lean forward. No.
Yeah, nah.
But as for... okay. I could understand where somebody missing a few brain cells, as herself,
Right.
would think that, you know, a man who is conscious going, I wasn't done yet, in his dying breaths after he's just suffered a severe thing.
Yeah.
It is... don't
that
know what
wasn't in
it's-
the article she read. I
Okay.
guarantee you she doesn't know that context.
Okay. Well,
I had to pull that from other sources.
I could believe where somebody like her would believe that that's satanic.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is, the science of it, that
Yeah.
she's so against, is sometimes, and I don't know what the fuck it's called, but there is a term for it, medically, the brain doesn't calculate the immense traumatic event it's just been through.
Yeah.
It can have a delayed reaction of anywhere from a minute to, I think, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Where it can continue to... it continues to move the body as it
Yeah.
would operate
Yeah.
before it goes, wait a minute. Oh, I'm missing an arm, a lot of blood.
Yeah.
My legs are broken. Oh, I'm supposed to be dead right now.
Yeah.
And then it gives in.
Yeah.
So up until that point, as horrifying as it is for a bystander, if they go up to somebody like that, who's still in the state of, I'm not done with my project yet, give me a minute. They're not dead, but they are on their way to brain dead.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, you know, Candace says a lot about growing up in the school of hard knocks. First off, fuck you, Candace.
Mm-hmm.
You moved from a rough neighborhood as a 9-year-old child to your much better grandfather's house in a much better neighborhood, and you went to one of the whitest schools in the country where you suffered one racist incident.
Yeah.
The incident shouldn't have happened. That's the official position of this show, but it did. Do not give me this ghetto I grew up in the school of hard knocks shit. I guarantee you, me having to not talk about having Jewish blood in a mostly white neighborhood in the middle of the Florida countryside was a lot more traumatic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, you know, we...
Shit, I couldn't be open about being Jewish till we, like, having Jewish blood until we moved here.
Yeah.
Because until we moved here, there wasn't a really big Jewish community, and if there was one, it was real despised where we were.
Yeah, you know, like, I mean, all of that is what it is, but, like, you know, I have seen, because I was in a really serious martial arts school growing up back in Jacksonville, and knockouts were common.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, I never got knocked out, but I knocked out a couple of guys just in the course of sparring. But one of my friends, he got knocked out. Give me just a second, y'all.
Hi, Squish.
A cat has decided to come back in the room. Come here, kitty. I'll pick you up. Okay, so holding a cat now. Yeah, one of my friends got knocked out in a ring fight, and he was effectively just not there. We thought he was fine.
Yeah.
We all thought he was fine because he got up, he congratulated the other fighter, but our teacher told me to stay with him. So I did. And me and the other guy, we got into a car with somebody else was driving. I was sitting in the back seat with this dude.
Yeah.
We got into a car with somebody else driving and someone up in the passenger seat. And anyway, we go to a Waffle House nearby. So it's the only place that was open. It was like midnight. We're in this small town in South Carolina. We go to this Waffle House. We all order, including this dude. And this is all going to become relevant real soon. We all order. And we're sitting there, we're waiting for our food. As the food gets placed in front of him, he wakes up. He takes a deep breath.
Yeah.
He had been walking asleep the entire time. He had been walking knocked out the entire time. We're talking like almost an hour and a half later. Because his was the last fight of the night. So there were pictures, people were talking with each other. He was just kind of sitting at a table alone. And that's when our teacher was like, you need to stay with him.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't think he's entirely okay. You need to stay with him. We're like, okay. So anyway, we're sitting there. The waffles get placed in front of him. And it's like the smell just wakes up his brain. And he's like, and he does this big inhale and he gets very animated. And he's like, what the fuck? And the other, like me and the other guy, not so much the other person that was with us. She was well, obviously a woman, but she was new to a lot of this culture we were in as fighters and stuff. And so yeah, she's like, what's going on? And me and the other dude were like, hold on, we know what, like, we caught eyes with each other and we knew what had happened. And so he's like, so he starts explaining it to him. He's got a much better voice than I did.
Yeah.
Calm, good dude. He's like, hey, you got knocked out. We took care of you. You ordered your own food. Just enjoy whatever the fuck you ordered. He's like, what did I... Oh, waffles and coffee. Okay, I'm going to be fine. And he's talking himself through the meal. He's like, you just cut it with the fork, the side of the fork. And I put it in my mouth. All right. Okay, this is not a dream. What happened? I remember I saw a punch coming at my face, and then I saw these waffles. What the fuck happened? And so we start telling him how the fight went. And he looked at me, he's like, you've always got a video camera at these things. Do you have a video of it? I was like, yeah, I don't think I had the best angle, but I go out to the car, I get my camera, I bring it back, and I scroll back to it, and I show him, and he's like, oh my fucking God, I just got up after that, and I've been, walking around? We're like, yeah. He's like, who told you to stay with me? We're like, well, Sifu did. He goes, I gotta thank him. Holy shit. He's like, in that state, I could have gone anywhere. Anything could have happened to me. He's like, thank you guys. And, he's very cool. Very apologetic. Good dude. But yeah, just like, you get knocked the fuck out. And I had seen guys get up after I'd give them a punch. Don't worry about the cat. She's fine. Just doing whatever cats do. But, yeah, I had, I'd seen guys just, wake up and do the inhale like he did. Typically, we'd knock, they'd get knocked out, and we'd drag them off to the side and let them kind of wake up on their own. And we would all continue sparring or doing bag work or whatever. And it was always the same thing. It was always like this deep inhale.
Yeah.
When they would come to, when they'd really come to. but I hadn't seen anybody walk through and be otherwise aware,
Yeah.
like, for that long. It was usually like guys would get knocked out, and then 5-10 minutes later, they'd be breathing okay. We never had anybody not be breathing, but they'd come to their senses. I'd never seen anybody go that long like that.
Yeah.
But our teacher he'd been a fighter for decades. He knew what was up. He knew the symptoms. So there you go. Go back out. Silly cat. Anyway. So yeah, I mean it's totally like you said, it's totally possible that Parsons' brain was just saying and doing whatever, not really catching up until 37 something minutes later when he died.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
but yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like, my old brother. He told me when he was in school, some kids had locked him into a, storage closet that was in the classroom.
Yeah.
And when he finally got out of the storage closet, one of them whacked him in the back of the head with one of those thick-ass textbooks.
Yeah.
And he went from seeing the room to standing over a kid that had pissed himself.
Yeah.
And he looked behind him and the classroom was just wrecked.
Yeah.
And he just was standing there, just confused as hell as to how he went from storage closet to a destroyed room and a terrified kid. Mm-hmm. And he just walked out of the room and then had asked one of the kids, like, hey, what actually happened earlier?
Yeah.
And they told him, like, hey, man, one of the bigger kids whacked you in the back of the head, and you just kind of kept going, and shit kept getting thrown at you, you kept getting hit, and you kept going, and then you just...
Yeah.
And woke up.
Yeah.
And he was like, cool ability, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, I've seen guys when they're going down swinging hard.
Yeah.
Like the body's just reacting.
Mm-hmm.
It's going down. Their lights are out. They don't know what they're doing, and they're just going. So yeah, it's entirely possible. But let's go on here. So, back to Biden. Anyone can look up the speech that Biden did on the White House website. It's short and off the cuff, so he rambles a bit. It reads better than Trump speeches read these days. She goes on to talk shit about how Biden is propping himself up with drugs and always has, and how his wife Jill Biden is making his choices for him, and she even floats the wrong assertion that the Democrats are talking about running Michelle Obama as president instead of Biden. It's all gross and takes up 10 minutes of her show, and ends with...
Complicit. Now it's just his wife that is complicit and the apparatus that surrounds them. It seems like they're fixing to replace him. Who knows with who? We're hearing Michelle Obama. But I'll tell you one thing. If Kamala Harris has anything to do with it, it's going to be her. There's a lot of bad stuff happening, and I don't know, other than dementia, what's going on with Biden. Maybe it's got something to do with his diet. Maybe the real issue is that he is not eating good meat. And
God
I don't have that
fucking
problem
damn it.
because I eat Good Ranchers. Good Ranchers is what I am subscribed to, meat that arrives at your door.
She really rolled that into an ad roll.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta give her points on creativity on her ad rolls.
Well, I mean, going into a rant about how Kamala Harris can't possibly be the next pick for the office of the president, despite being she's the person that's literally one heartbeat away from the job in every sense.
Yeah.
Her rant lasts for several minutes and goes into that plug for Good Ranchers. Or goes into another plug for Good Ranchers.
Oh, let me guess.
The third plug that I'm not playing.
Let me guess. Kamala Harris, maybe the reason why she's on the left side on everything is because her brain doesn't have enough protein to operate. And
No, she
she'd
doesn't
have
even-
better protein if...
No, she doesn't. Yeah, I mean, that may be, yeah.
Come
Yeah,
on.
Right.
It's easy material.
It doesn't.
It writes itself.
You would think it just doesn't go
Meat
there.
has protein. Protein is required to make the brain work. Oh, wait, that's science. My bad.
Yeah.
I forgot.
See, that's
where
the
you problem. Yeah,
that's where you went and done fucked up.
fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm bothering to go through this episode, and we're going to hear the comments section read soon for a reason. I'm going to start applying a label to Candace that I don't like, but it is in light of what we're going to hear and in light of what I have heard on her other shows, things I haven't played but we'll build a library of for a special page on our website. We'll discuss that on the other side of this clip.
Some of your comments. I was completely overwhelmed with the stories that people were sharing, people that had survived, whose families had survived, what the Allies did to them following World War II. And here's just one comment. At Plankamus writes, "My grandfather was a Sudetendeutscher. He was an amazing man and never stopped feeling connected to his homeland. His sister was raped by Russian soldiers and never married. His brother lost his legs as an underage soldier in Stalingrad. They lost their farm, were expelled from their home. I have endless reverence for his perseverance."
Now, I don't know if you all heard it, but I fucking did. I was waiting for something like this. Candace has gone on and on about what happened to the Germans in Europe after World War II. And this is an example of why I am applying an accurate label to her moving forward. What I heard in that, and I'll play it again, because she kind of skims past it, but listen at the end.
Some of your comments.
Wait for it.
I was completely overwhelmed with the stories that people were sharing, people that had survived, whose families had survived, what the Allies did to them following World War II. And here's just one comment. At Plankamus writes, "My grandfather was a Sudetendeutscher. He was an amazing man and never stopped feeling connected to his homeland. His sister was raped by Russian soldiers and never married. His brother lost his legs as an underage soldier in Stalingrad. They lost their farm, were expelled from their home. I have endless reverence for his perseverance."
Yeah. The dude that lost his legs was a German soldier in Stalingrad. I feel no pity for a Nazi. I don't care when or why. But Candace does. Moving on to the next one. Unless you have thoughts,
Oh,
I'll just play the next one.
God.
So true, so true. Stephanie writes, "Been waiting for someone to actually talk about this as a German descendant. My grandmother had to escape with my German Jewish grandfather to England. Nothing is told about the innocent people that lost everything and had to run away." It is very true. And you know what's scary is to think that they then just passed laws. Like if you questioned the World War II narrative that had been assigned at all, and this still is on today, you can be arrested. Like the Germans are still fearful because of speech laws that were passed. And I hope that people who watch this show understand why I am covering these topics, because it's close to home, meaning they are talking about passing speech laws in this country, okay? And for whatever reason, Americans, we have just had our heads up in the clouds, and we do not realize that it is so easy to remove freedom. And if we don't start paying attention, learning real history, learning how it was done, then we are going to become victims of it in the future. I truly believe that. This person writes,
I believe that too. I actually believe that too, but for totally different reasons. Go ahead.
She just I feel like she just glossed over my German Jewish grandfather. She just kind of glossed right on over that, if I'm not incorrect. Yeah. Although props to her, she didn't say the word Jewish with a hard J. She's getting better.
Here's the thing about the Germans in Sudetenland. That was the Czechoslovakian Germans. Further looking into it, they were some of the most boisterous pro-Nazi people. Mm-hmm. As I've said before, I'm pretty sure that the communities around them knew who the fuck they were. Yeah. And when the time came for that expulsion, they were all too ready to take all their shit and send them packing. Yeah. Was it right to do in every case? Probably not. Was it understandable? Probably yes. Yeah. Regardless, America didn't fucking do it. Mm-mm. That was something that happened in another country under other laws, where they had to deal with the Nazis literally next door and in their own backyards.
Yeah.
What they did is entirely up to them.
Not to mention, there's as it stands with almost any war, even after you win the war, yes, but there's damage control for sometimes a decade after the fact. Especially in the case of World War II, there was a bunker full of Nazis that didn't know the war had ended.
Yeah.
Because their radios fucked up.
Yeah.
So they were sitting in a bunker for, I want to say, 5 years, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the...
I'm not sure what the time on it was.
I know there were Japanese soldiers that they were finding up until, like, the last couple of decades that were just on islands that were totally living out the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expecting the Americans or allies
They had to send
attack them.
people in period dress
Yeah.
as officers to tell them, you did a good job, please come home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had to do the same thing with the Nazis that they found in bunker because
They were already radicalized more so with being stuck.
yeah, they were just there, and so when they showed up they were shooting at them, and they went, okay, who's shooting at us? They identified them as Nazis, really old looking ones. And they sent some men in period dress doing all of the correct gestures to get in, and then they went, okay, we're moving out now.
Yeah.
Moved them out, and then they had psychologists go in and go, hey, so the Nazi Party doesn't really exist as it once did.
And the Fuhrer shot himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that
like,
Captain America when he wakes up from his coma and he goes, y'all got my time period wrong. And
Yeah.
oh, well, yeah, you're no longer stuck in the 50s.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
not the 50s.
The 40s.
40s.
Yeah. Well, regarding German speech laws, Germany has implemented strict laws regarding speech related to World War II, particularly focusing on hate speech, Holocaust denial, and Nazi propaganda. These laws are rooted in Germany's historical context and its commitment to preventing the resurgence of Nazi ideology. So here are some key aspects of that concerning World War II. Holocaust denial laws. Germany has explicitly criminalized Holocaust denial. In 1994, Section 130 of the German Criminal Code was expanded to ban Holocaust denial, making it punishable by up to 5 years in prison. This law was enacted after a federal appeals court in Germany overturned the sentence of a far-right German politician who had organized a lecture describing the gassing of Jews at Auschwitz as a hoax. Hate speech laws. Section 130 of the German Criminal Code also criminalizes certain types of hate speech. This law prohibits incitement to hatred and insults that assault human dignity against people based on their racial, national, religious, or ethnic background. In post-World War II Germany, this law has been used to prosecute racist and anti-Semitic threats and slurs, carrying a sentence of up to 5 years in prison. Nazi propaganda and symbols in the German Penal Code have also been prohibited, and publicly denying the Holocaust and disseminating Nazi propaganda both offline and online, which includes sharing images such as swastikas, wearing an SS uniform, or making statements in support of Hitler. These restrictions are part of Germany's efforts to prevent the spread of Nazi ideology and to maintain a clear stance against its historical past. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, the Allied occupation forces implemented strict censorship measures to control German media, and this included confiscation of literature considered Nazi or militaristic, banning 30,000 plus book titles, and destroying confiscated books. These measures were temporary and part of the denazification program and set the stage for Germany's ongoing efforts to combat extremist ideologies. The German Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, though, expression and opinion under Article 5. However, it also includes provisions that limit these freedoms. 1, the general laws. 2, provisions for the protection of young people, anybody underage. and the right to personal honor. So like defamatory.
Okay.
Like someone can't just scream "You're a Nazi" without you being able to do proper blowback on them.
Okay.
Whatever that is. So these limitations allow for the enforcement of laws against hate speech and Holocaust denial while maintaining a commitment to free expression. Germany has still had to deal with the rising tide of their own alt-right, but it has been met with massive pushback from the general public. But yeah, Candace and her ilk will scream and moan about history not being taught, but what she means, of course, is history from a certain point of view. Given all of this and so much more that we're going to cover, and I'm going to be documenting on our website as new information is learned, I feel comfortable labeling Candace Owens, wife of George Farmer and mother of 3 children, a Christo-fascist. I know some of you listening are probably saying, well, duh.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to be clear. To me, this is worse in every sense from a run-of-the-mill fascist. A Christo-fascist is someone that will use their faith to justify the worst atrocities and only seems to be concerned with their direct allies, and in this case especially Christians. More to the point for Candace, Catholics. Her actual main gripe about the bomb dropped on Nagasaki was that it was dropped on Christians because, and this is historically accurate, Nagasaki was basically the center of Christian worship in Japan at the time. Of the 12,000 Christians in Japan at the time, Nagasaki was home to about 8,500 of them. When Candace talks about bombings or war crime killings going on, it is almost always done with her being offended specifically because Christians are dying. But this viewpoint also allows her to lie constantly about the plight of supposed Christians. Candace seems to take the approach to Christianity that Protestantism either didn't happen or it's okay, because she doesn't make much distinction between being a Catholic and growing up in a Protestant home, which is the same as her husband. He also did not grow up Catholic. They converted together from what I currently understand. But that's also kind of the point, I think. In my experience, in churches, those of us that grew up in religion were almost always not nearly as into it as new converts. It was easy for us to see them as zealots playing catch-up, and for them to see us as lapsed Christians. I think Candace and her zealotry has found its home in Christo-fascism, which is why she walks the tightrope of being a Third Reich apologist. And Candace gives us this, though.
Should be a generation that's going to stand up to it. It's totally fine to be called mean names on the internet. Like being called an idiot on the internet, who cares? Like these people they mean nothing to me in the scheme of things. K-Joy.
So, hey, if we don't mean anything to her, I guess we're in the clear to do this show.
Oh, yeah. So if we get a cease and desist, then that confirms narcissism, right?
I'm just not going to look at it.
I mean, we can just frame it up.
It'll get framed, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll go buy a frame. I'll go buy a nice frame. Yeah. So, Candace goes on to round us out with a message from her Menect account. And I despise having to add Menect to my fucking dictionary in LibreOffice. But anyway, let's round out this Christo-fascist anti-science bit with these next 2 clips. The first one is Candace pushing her Menect with a listener comment.
Lastly, I got this comment on Menect, and it's a comment that I get often. It says, "Hey Candace, I am David and was one of the parents that participated in those 4 monthly Zoom calls about childhood vaccines in 2022 as you were recording them for Parler. I loved the reshoots for Daily Wire, but I wonder what the long-term plan is for that series. Do you have plans to find a new home for it? It's one of the most profoundly important projects I believe you have worked on, and I don't think that you will ever know how much good has ultimately come out of that series. Thanks again for it, and I love discussing that all with you on those Zoom calls."
So, before we move on, Candace Owens and her husband, George Farmer, used to run Parler, which was a laughably bad wannabe social network. Parler, which is not spelled the way you think it is.
So not.
It's spelled Parler.
Okay.
Parler suffered a massive security breach, which affected a lot of people directly, because to sign up for a Parler account, you had to provide proof of an ID and upload it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Well, the security on all of that was so bad that when hackers breached the defenses, all of the ID information was in an unencrypted file.
What the fuck?
So once that was made public, a lot of assholes lost their jobs, and good riddance. Seriously, fuck all those fucks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the site obviously went through trouble, and right around the time Candace did that interview with her good friend Ye, he was in talks with Candace's husband to buy Parler.
Man, if he had been like... if he had been maybe like... I don't know if he drinks...
Probably.
If he had been like 1 or 2 more shots deep, that could have been...
Well, from what I know of on that one, the talks went on for months, and Ye's divorce from Kim Kardashian kind of wiped away the money that he was going to be using to buy Parler.
I forgot he I didn't forget that he was with a Kardashian. I forgot that he divorced a Kardashian.
No.
Oh,
she divorced a Ye.
Okay.
Yeah.
She divorced a West.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, he was in talks with Candace's husband to buy Parler. Nothing came of it. Last I checked, the site was in limbo, owned by some like money group, some rich assholes. I don't care. But apparently, Candace used to hold roundtable talks on Parler. Candace closes out the show with this gish gallop.
And first and foremost, I just want to thank you, Dave, for being one of the early supporters of Shot in the Dark, because I was doing it by myself. It was not fashionable pre-COVID to be a person that was speaking out against vaccines, and I knew that God gave me a platform for many reasons, and I do believe that children are being poisoned under the guise of science. And I created that series to simply give parents information that is being hidden from them in plain sight. Same thing I'm doing with this show. I'm giving you information about history that is being hidden right under your nose that you may not know, and we will definitively bring it back, because nothing makes me happier than when I'm walking down the street and people come up to me with their babies and they're like, I have the healthiest baby ever, thanks to your series I was informed and I felt comfortable saying no to this, and didn't just use the doctor God science, doctors would trust the science, don't even ask questions, you don't know anything, we're going to use fear tactics to make you fearful not to listen to us. Again, science has transformed into a pagan cult with various deities, doctors, authorities, the CDC, the FDA, NASA, all of this stuff just telling you what to believe, and when you really actually don't know anything. Like, we have no information and we blindly trust authorities. I don't do that anymore. I want to know what the information is, and as I've said, and I will say again, I believe that your discernment comes from God. We talk about your gut instinct. That's your God instinct, and that there are people that are intentionally moving us away in our society, moving us away from God, moving us away from our instinct. And I hope that anything that I create draws you closer to that. Draws you closer to understanding that you have a creator. And your creator isn't a doctor or a scientist. It just isn't. I'm sorry. It is God. With that said, ladies and gentlemen,
Now, a few things that affirm not only the Christo-fascism, but also the grift. People that listen to Knowledge Fight probably heard it too, and I think you did. But let me explain. Candace says that people walk up to her on the street and show her their healthy babies that are unvaxxed. I'm sorry, but I call bullshit on this. Alex Jones, Tucker, Trump, name any of these hooligans, they all have this kind of story that supposedly happens all the time. They all have their own spin on it, and I would wager this kind of thing has happened maybe once, maybe, but it is certainly not frequent. Second was her talking about her gut feeling. All of these people hearken back to that, and not the fact that they live and exist entirely in a world built by experts over many generations, but that comes with the denial of science and education, and it's part of Christo-fascism. It doesn't take much to see that Candace's gut feeling is, much like her colleagues, very wrong in spirit and practice. But closing this out, yes, I do entirely believe that Candace is a full Christo-fascist, and the website will be worked on regularly and updated often with the clips that prove the point. If Candace has no problem being called names, then she should have no problem with the site if she ever finds it. At the very least, it will be true and backed up by her own words as evidence. I feel gross. Let's drink something stupid after you say whatever's on your mind.
God feeling, for one.
Isn't that a bit arrogant?
Well, it's not only arrogant, but,
yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So, God feeling, if memory serves, one of the Christian things is that there will be no God, or there is no God more powerful than I, something like that.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So, kind of trampling on your own faith there if you saying that it's your God feeling. Now maybe just misconception of words. Maybe she meant your God, meaning, her God feeling being, her talking about her gods. Projecting shit into her womb to make it vibrate, I guess. I don't know. I swear to God, if that gets mentioned in a later episode, I'm gonna have a problem. Gonna have an aneurysm.
Listeners are gonna be like, "You're a sorcerer."
Yeah.
See, what happens a lot on Knowledge Fight, this is a running joke on Knowledge Fight, is Jordan on Knowledge Fight often calls Dan a witch.
Yeah.
Because he'll say something, and then, like, not even a few episodes later, Alex will say that same thing, or Dan will say that something, like, happened in the past. They'll do, like, a past episode of InfoWars, and it will prove out, and he's like, I swear I didn't set this up. This is not creatively edited. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned, moon denial and fucking flat Earth, and where we fucking are.
So tonight's soda of choice is State Fair Kettle Corn. State Fair Soda Kettle Corn. State Fair Soda is another one by Blue Sun Bottling, Spring Lake, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Yep, you're all right. We cannot get away from this company, and frankly, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I do want to get this thing open, though.
There should be a...
There we go.
Yes,
I see it.
turtle. The other thing about the whole flat Earth... God, flat Earth. I've heard so many fucking things, and... I saw an article that, like, I gave a read, because for a moment there I was like, okay, this seems like an interesting, stupid thing to read on my break, which... Enjoy that piss one. It was very simply this. Oh wow!
Oh, wow! It smells.
This
smells identical to kettle corn.
It was.
You want to talk about some wizards and witches? These people.
Oh yeah. Was that we couldn't have launched a rocket to the moon because the supposed amount of force it would require.
I'm going to say this is not accurate.
But
because,
it's not bad.
Well, no, it's not accurate because I don't like kettle corn.
Oh, fair enough.
But this I like.
Yeah.
So it's not accurate in the sense that I wouldn't call this kettle corn, but
I can
really
taste
like
the popcorn.
Yeah, like it's
it's
really good. Like,
yeah.
There's something about kettle corn that I don't like, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
Is it the caramel?
No, like I don't know what it is. Like, because I've had kettle corn that's not caramelized.
Okay.
And it's just it doesn't light me up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because I like my popcorn to be salty and spicy.
Yeah. Well, my biggest problem with kettle corn, it always feels like they have stale ass kernels that they use for it.
Could be.
And so, like, initially it's not bad because, you think, oh, it's just hard because of the caramel. But
yeah.
I've had stale popcorn. I'm like, this is hard and chewy like kettle corn.
Yeah.
If I put some caramel on this, I would have kettle corn. I think that's the problem I run into.
I think maybe it's the cooking method.
It probably is,
kettle corn. But yeah, regardless, I've never been a fan. But this is actually all right. Yeah. It's a bit cream soda-y.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit like a cream soda, but no, it's really good.
Yeah, I can taste the notes of popcorn.
You can definitely if you're just going on the smell profile alone, it smells like kettle corn.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Like, they nailed that.
Oh yeah. We need
No
to get
fizz either. No fizz.
You know what we should have done?
What?
We should have done the Warhead Sour.
No.
No? You want to save that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that one's going to be astoundingly horrendous.
Yeah. But yeah, do you have any other any other thoughts on this episode before we close out?
I just don't understand how people can believe in a flat Earth or that science is satanical. And furthermore, okay,
Uh-huh.
she says flat Earth,
Yeah.
moon isn't real.
No.
Oh, okay.
She said the moon landing.
Moon landing wasn't
And she
real.
only singles out the one. There were at least 4?
Yeah, and you were right, I did look it up earlier. It was just a rover. I
Yeah.
didn't see that part. I had only read the headline on it that
Okay.
was, Chinese land on moon, and I was like, oh, hallelujah, we made it to the moon again.
Yeah.
But as for all of that, I have this, and it's got to be the D&D part of my brain.
Yeah.
But whenever somebody's like, oh, science has to be satanic, first thing that comes to my head is like a pentagram drawn on the interior of like those satanic pentagram circle things.
Yeah.
Just like drawn on a disc that is then put into the back end of a thruster that is then provided energy to open up a little portal to just like provide hellfire to launch a rocket.
Right.
That is what I think when somebody says science is satanic. Is I get an idea of like that and I go, that actually sounds pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
And then I sit back and I go, wait, that's not what you meant, is it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. But yeah, no. The whole it's because like it's a real easy if then for these people.
Okay.
If science is satanic, then we can just say whatever
Yeah.
is satanic, and we can get laws passed that
Ban it.
that normally people would be against. Yeah, it's a way to get the weakest minded
To follow.
agree to pretty much whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her whole thing about they're passing speech laws. Yes, Republicans in states like Florida and Oklahoma and Texas are trying to get speech laws passed.
Yeah.
They've been doing that for a while. Yeah. Yeah, no one is trying to, and I'm sorry, but if they, if someone wants to develop speech laws specifically against Nazi shit, they're going to have my vote.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing. Honestly, I kind of want to get my hands on a German copy of Wolfenstein.
You can get it on Steam.
Yeah, my reasoning for that, dear viewers, if you don't know what Wolfenstein is,
They know what Wolfenstein
good.
is.
Wolfenstein, the German version of it, as for the aforementioned, lack of
Swastikas
and such,
yeah.
has a different way the game not only looks, but also how people speak.
Yeah.
Because, it has to be
It
has to be Nazi, but not Nazi at the same time.
It's sanitized.
Yeah, it's got to be sanitized Nazi, which just sounds like a fun version of the game to play.
It might be. I don't know. I know you can get it on Steam.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I've seen it on, I remember seeing it on Steam years ago. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I know you can get the latest run,
Yeah.
the Bethesda run of Wolfenstein
Okay.
on Steam. At least you can look it up. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think that's it. We are nearly at 3 hours
Fuck. Yeah.
on this episode.
And my Helldivers is fully synchronized, so
Oh,
yeah, about
Good
to
for
go
you.
kill some bugs and robots for democracy.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to cut this off here, and it's been fun. Again, I'm not apologizing for the ads if you're getting this show for free because it costs us money. So, again, that being the case, if you want an ad-free show, go to Patreon, sign up for a subscription. There will be better benefits in time with that. I work on it when I can. That's it, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yep. Goodbye.